In ancient Rome, folks would pay money to watch people be torn apart by lions in an arena packed with fellow gore-thirsty onlookers. What the fuck was that all about? That may be an extreme example, but humans have always been drawn to terrible and bizarre things when it comes to being entertained. Freak shows, snuff films, accident videos, voyeurism, and gruesome true crime stories. We discuss some of the crazier things society has done in the name of entertainment throughout history. We also look into the psychology of why we like to watch bad things. Intended for mature, open-minded audiences only. If you are easily offended, we suggest you turn this wacky shit straight off.
How do?
I've got you tickets to paradise.
Oh my god, that's so weird. I was like, when he calls, I'm gonna answer singing, "Who's gonna drive you home?"
Oh
like,
boy, we both covered the.
I was just thinking, like, and then you called, and I'm stoned, and I was like, "Hello."
Like, I'm gonna do it. Ring. Yeah, what's up?
Yo.
Yeah, lost a couple big ones. This
I was just gonna bring that up. That's so funny. Yeah,
that's
weird, huh?
Number 3. I wonder. It always does seem to come in threes.
Who do you think it's gonna be?
Well, yeah.
Let's get the other guys on. I want to know.
Okay. You guys there? Lyle, John?
Yep. Hello.
So Christopher and I had a question.
A moment.
So we just lost Eddie Money and Rick Ocasek with the Cars. Back to back, really. It always comes in threes. So do you guys got any money down on... any money? Too soon. Down on which one's going to be next? I think these two were not terribly shocking. Eddie Money's been ill for a while. Rick Ocasek was, 75? Dude, not a bad life for a rock star.
We had Eddie Money at my casino 6 months ago.
Oh, wow. He must have gone down real quick.
Autograph, at least?
I didn't even go. I should have. No, I wish I would have.
Yeah.
My money's on Manilow. Barry fucking Manilow.
You think we're going to bury Manilow, huh?
Oh, yeah. Zing.
Gene. I'm going to say Gene Simmons.
Really?
He's been dead for years. He's a robot.
Yeah. He
dead
doesn't.
Inside.
He looks artificial on the outside now, doesn't he? I know he's had a lot of plastic surgery. But...
Apparently, he's having to go in for some sort of procedure, and they're like postponing or canceling their
Goodbye Forever tour.
Vegas, something, I don't know, some major show that they were going to be doing here really soon is being canceled or postponed because he's got to go in to get something done.
Yeah, Jagger just got out of the hospital for a major heart procedure, and he was just in Seattle on stage rocking.
And he's still in better shape than any of us.
Yeah, what the fuck? It's not fair. Maybe he really did sell his soul to Satan. Lyle, what do you think?
That was my pick.
Oh, Jagger?
Yeah.
Having just saw Brian Wilson last night, he ain't looking so hot, although he's been in rough shape for a while. But we went to go see, so the Zombies opened up for Brian Wilson. I fucking love the Zombies, one of my favorite bands. I've never seen them play anywhere around Washington, not since I've been a fan. So I don't know how rare that show was, but they sounded amazing. Like, it was fucking great. They basically played the entire Odyssey, or Oracle and Odyssey album. Brian Wilson, God bless him, comes out in, well, he doesn't come out.
A wheelchair?
Well, basically, he does, as I was going to say, he doesn't really come out. The curtain comes up, and he's just sitting there behind the piano. Now, he's got like 12 or 13 people in his band. And so you know, he doesn't have to do much. He's just sitting there, and then I think he's playing the piano at first, and it's like, the East Coast girls are da-da-da. You know, he's kind of like bumbling out these words, and then 5 seconds into it, the band kicks in, and you don't hear him again for like 6 more songs, which is understandable. And I knew that, Jody, my friend Jody,
Not your ex-wife.
Yeah, let's get that.
You were
going.
waiting for it.
I don't think that's happened on the
Old-
new podcast.
Old habits die hard. I almost swore not to do it.
It was
You'll
almost
almost be sad.
it's not.
You see how I waited for it? It's like I was fishing for it. I was like, come on,
Paused
go
and
ahead,
you
do it.
chuckled.
Just fucking do it. But he saw Brian Wilson a while ago, and I think it's pretty much the same setup. It was like 10 years ago he saw that, and Brian just kind of sits there and the band around him. You know, it's a huge band, so they have all of the harmonies that Brian Wilson wrote for the Beach Boys, and, you know, those beautiful fucking harmonies. And the dude is a genius, or was. Now, it really, like, Sarah kept laughing, but it was like a sad laugh. Like, we were just like, this is weird, man, because it felt like a South Park gag. Because he's just like this
Watching
sort of...
the fucking robots on Chuck E. Cheese come onto the stage.
Well, he's just kind of like this portly dude. He's obese sitting there behind the piano, and like 3 minutes into it, it just looks like he starts sort of like dazing off. Sarah thought for sure a couple times he actually nodded off. So he's just kind of sitting there doing nothing while the entire band plays all his old songs. And then 5 or 6 songs into it, he'll sing another bar, and then the band kicks in. It was just like, this is weird. And, you know, I'd never seen Brian Wilson before, so it was like, and I'm a huge Beach Boys fan. I'm a harmony guy. When I write songs, I write a lot of harmony, and that motherfucker wrote, and not just harmony, but like overlapping vocal parts that don't really go together, like, you know, like a chorus. And he was just brilliant at that, and really bold with how he did it. Back in the age of psychedelics, he was still doing these like beautiful angelic falsettos. No one was doing that at that time. That shit was old news. But the Beatles were paying attention. You know, the Beatles and the Beach Boys. A lot of people say it was the Stones or the Beatles or the Who, or, you know, it really was. If there was one band that the Beatles were actively competing with in terms of like, we need to be as good as those motherfuckers, it was the Beach Boys, at least during that era, because I can't remember which came first, but like when Rubber Soul came out, I think Brian Wilson was like, holy shit, why am I even making music? And then so, like, an answer to that, he did Pet Sounds, and then the Beach Boys, or the Beatles were like, holy shit, why are we even making music? It was like this thing where they went back and forth. It was like, these motherfuckers were sort of sharpening each other, and that's how we got all that amazing fucking music. So it was interesting to be like, you know, just sitting a few rows up the hill, and there's the dude.
Was Sgt. Pepper's a response to Pet Sounds?
I can't remember what happened. I know that Rubber Soul was one of them that literally almost drove Brian Wilson mad. And like, how do I compete with that? But Pet Sounds was definitely the one that I think the Beatles were, mostly Paul McCartney, was like, how do you even make music after you've heard this album? And so yeah, it was like a back and forth. There were 2 or 3 albums where they were really really paying attention to what the other was doing, but, you know, all in good fun. There wasn't anything mean-spirited about it. They were just like fanatical about what the other one was doing and couldn't figure out how they were doing it. And I would imagine that the Wall of Sound sort of thing that you know, Pet Sounds became was what inspired the Wall of Sound to be part of the Beatles' final album, which was Let It Be. And, you know, years later, they went back to the master tapes and took out some of the Wall of Sound, some of that famous Phil Spector Wall of Sound, and stripped it down and re-released it as Let It Be Naked. And it was pretty popular. It's disorienting to hear it after you've heard all, you know, those songs for so many years a certain way. But yeah, the dude's a fucking legend, and I'm a huge fan, but it was a weird way to see him. That being said, it was still fun to hear all those songs performed live well, you know, and all those harmonies and all those. But yeah, the Zombies I really went to see the Zombies, and was not disappointed at all. I was shocked. And that's an interesting thing, you know, that's a crazy part about life. They're basically the same age. And the Zombies are all thin, and they look, well, you know, they're not like jumping around like maniacs, but they look like rock stars still, and they sound like rock stars. And then you've got Brian down there just like, when's pudding? You know, it just felt like rough days. But God bless him. Again, he's out and about, and I guess when this tour first got underway, he canceled a bunch of dates. But the night before last night's show, they did a show in Hollywood, and it was star-studded. Tons and tons of guest vocalists popped up to sing a song or two, including Billy Idol, of all people. Strange. Zooey Deschanel.
What?
Yeah.
Huh.
The singer for Death Cab for Cutie joined them in Seattle. I don't know. We left before the end of the show, so I don't know if anyone else popped up. But we were like, yeah, I think we got it. I think we got the Brian Wilson experience circa 2019. But again, worth the price of admission for the Zombies alone, if you're able to catch them on the rest of that tour. Strange days. So I'm going to get my money's on Brian Wilson. It was a long-winded answer, but wow, what's that noise? Is that a dog lapping something?
It's my dog, like, limping around. He just got up off the couch. He's been there for hours.
That's how I feel when I get up. Out. Greetings, and welcome back to How Bizarre. It's, I don't know what the weather's like over there, but right here, it's a nice, cool, damp, crisp, early autumn eve. And
it's shitty. It's rainy as fuck.
Oh, you don't like that weather?
Yeah, it just feels early.
Well, it doesn't. I didn't say I didn't like it. It's
yeah,
shitty.
well, you guys get too much of it over there. But I fucking love this weather. It's all drizzly. It's just so cozy. I got me a pumpkin ale, a fully loaded pipe, my cat chilling next to me. I'm ready to do this shit, Ross.
Sounds pretty good.
Window open. It's just that I fucking love. I think most people love autumn. I think I would wait. It has to be the most popular season because I hear people, they never shut the fuck up about it. But I'm always baffled when people just straight up hate it. Like they hate when they feel the warm nights or the warm days of summer giving way to that coolness. That's my favorite thing in life, when the relentless sun starts to set on summer.
I'll tell you what I hate about it, Ron.
Oh, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really like autumn myself, but being someone who has to get up fairly early to commute when the weather starts to get cold, I drive a shitty car that's about 20 years old, and
classic would call it.
When I have to get up at like 5:30 or 5 in the morning, and I have to scrape my windshield off, and my defrost doesn't work, and I'm just like white knuckling it down the road to the. It's just annoying. I like everything else about it, but just like that whole like feeling of like getting up and it's dark and you're not awake yet, and you have to like. You're just in a fugue state, It's just I don't like. I just don't like it.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about winter these days. I used to like winter more when I snowboarded, but now that I don't, it really all winter is to me is work to shovel snow and the hassle of driving.
I gotta be honest. I've known you for a fucking long time, and I have never known that you snowboarded.
Oh, it was a former life. I mean, that was back like when I skateboarded. That was skating was like my entire life for I don't know, maybe between like 10 and 17, 16, 17.
Have you tried to hop back on one since in a while?
And it wasn't as bad as I expected, but I think the reason I stopped, I used to say I stopped skateboarding when I,
oh my God,
fucking girl.
When I think about you with that crazy long hair you used to have, it makes a lot more sense. Like if the complete picture comes into play, I'm like, all right, yeah.
Yeah. Well, but I really think the reason I stopped skating is that at one point I started being afraid of getting hurt. And you can't do that sport, even casually, in my opinion, if you're worried about getting hurt. There's something to it. There's something to the cadence, to the balance, to just how you do it, that, for years and years and years, I was fearless with it, like completely fucking fearless, and fine, never got hurt, and not really anyway, had some snafus, but even after that, I just like, get back on it, them's the breaks, but
skate it off.
At some point, you get to a place where you're old enough and you realize that, if I lose these teeth, they don't grow back.
Or I could really hurt myself and go to the emergency room, and I don't have any insurance, and that would be really expensive.
Yeah, you start thinking like a grown-up, which sucks, but it happens. Now, there are people, and obviously, Tony Hawk has got to be 50 by now, or close to it. He's still skating. Probably not as much as he was 10 years ago, but 10 years ago he was skating almost as much as he ever was. So
he's still breaking records and shit, man.
Well, but you can't quit is my point. Like you can't, I don't think that you can stop and go back to skating the same way you can a lot of other things, including snowboarding. I would get back up on the slopes, but boy, I would stretch like a motherfucker before I strapped into those pups. But yeah, no, I that was the only thing that I really enjoyed about winter. Was getting on the old snowboard. And, it became an obsession for a while, but I never got super into it like I did with skating. Skating was my whole fucking life.
Me desperately, too. You guys are going to fucking hate this, and it's probably going to make a lot of sense. I was a rollerblader.
I know this about you. And when we first became friends, we met up at some point when we were like, I think, did we go riding the loop trail or something around town? And then you showed up on your fucking skates.
I forgot about that.
I swear, now I probably embellished this memory, and maybe it's not real tall, but I swear that I can recall you coming up like fucking Ned Flanders, like, hey, who's ready to skate? And doing like a little spin. I'm pretty sure you did like a little spin and then like did the backwards thing where you skated backwards.
Stupid sexy Flanders.
It's you're not embellishing too much there.
Feels like I'm not making anything up at all. Yeah. Hilarious. Well, it's a different world now. Everything's different. But back in the day, there was a definite. That's like the Socias and what was the Greasers? The Greasers. What it was? They didn't call them the Greasers, though, did they? Or was it Greasers? Maybe it was. Greasers.
No, there was like the Socias and it wasn't the Townies, but it was.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Huh.
Something else. Yeah.
Well, anyway, it was like that. Like, we are vehemently enemies. Like, we just have to be. But no, at that point in time, not only was I not skating, but I was too busy laughing, quite honestly. Now, do you still rollerblade, don't you, Chris?
No, I do not.
I thought you did just a few years ago.
No, I did. I helped with when my ex was into roller derby, but on quads it's different. You feel, less. I was gonna say, you feel a little less flamboyant on quads.
Yeah, because you're kind of starting to talk my lingo right now. I got those on those things.
Yeah.
So it was like the only thing that there was to do in this valley when we were younger was there was this roller rink across town, and that was the thing. You'd ask your parents to take you and drop you off, and you just run around on your four-wheeled skates.
Yeah. There's a petition that seems to be gaining steam here in town to bring back a roller rink. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't happened already. With the roller derbies and all that.
Ours is closing for its doors in Bremerton here. And it's been there for like 40 years.
Oh, wow. Interesting. It survived a lot of storms. I just looked it up. It does seem to be Soch and Greaser. For some reason that it seemed like there was another word, but no, Soch and Greaser. Yeah, and I think we know who's who, don't we, Chris?
No, fuck off.
Greaser.
Well, tonight we're going to be talking about all the fucked up ways we have entertained ourselves as a species over the eons, and I'm hoping that this. I've got a lot to talk about, but I want you guys to interject at any time because this is all going to boil down to opinion. Because even the research that I tried to do into the psychology of this, as you'll see, it's a little spotty and a little, unsatisfying to some degree. But there are some interesting things that I learned in researching it and some fucked up shit that I didn't know about history. And a lot of weird things that we used to do to entertain ourselves. I'm looking forward to getting into that. But first, what you guys got on the newsroom floor?
I got something I want to share with you guys I've been holding on to for a bit. And I have a feeling, for me personally, it's one of those things that I'm going to be, if it actually happens, I'm going to be really excited to see at first. And then I'm going to get really annoyed. And I feel like you guys may feel the same way. And before I talk about it, there in Wenatchee, there's something that I've never seen before. And I'm sure there are lots of places that have something like this, but it just felt so special in Wenatchee. And what I'm talking about is that giant cross that lights up on the mountain.
Yeah.
Now, some guy rigged up, I don't remember the story. You probably know the entire story, but he rigged up a giant cross. How big would you say it is? I mean, like, it's so hard to tell.
Oh boy, it is hard to tell.
100 foot tall, 50 foot tall, something like that, right?
Yeah, I would guess.
Yeah, it's
100.
something like that.
Yeah,
75 at least.
And it's up on a mountaintop. And now Wenatchee is a really unique place. It's a valley. It's like you're in a little bowl, and you look up and there's mountain ranges all around you, but it's small enough. So you look up into the night sky and you see this lit cross just floating there. And it's kind of wild. You always look up and it's there. Go ahead. What can you tell me about it?
I honestly don't know a lot about the history of it. I do know that the one that's up there now is a new and improved version that he, I guess, crowdfunded or somebody donated. The first one was the first one was smaller and looked a little more homemade. This one is like razor sharp, and you can't miss it.
No, I don't.
There's actually a website that's called Wenatchee Valley Cross, and it's set up for dedications. So like if you could look on on through the months, so like and say like it's a passing of your mom, like it's like Saturday, right? You could dib it and basically put like in loving memory and have. You could sponsor it. Basically, it's sponsored by it.
Oh, my fucking God. I'm totally sponsoring the cross for Lollapalooza. It's fucking happening.
That's great. That's a great idea.
I'll dig into my save. I don't give a shit. I need that good. Cross. Well, so, and I'm not even a spiritual person or religious, so to speak. I just think it's neat to see. It's just kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So the story is, I know that was a fucking incredible intro, but the story is, Russian ad agency to launch space billboards visible from Earth. Now, this is
Blade
a real
Runner shit.
I know, and I have a couple of renderings of what that might look like, and it's not what you think. It's not like a giant billboard lit up. It's a series of cubes that will reflect sunlight back in the night sky, basically. So it looks almost like a really flickery light bright. Here, I'm going to send you an image of what that might. So here's
a series of cubes.
There's a GIF.
Speaking of skateboard.
Go ahead and
oh wow, that's going to be surreal. Okay, so in this depiction, it from afar anyway, I guess it's going to kind of look like a floating neon sign. Yeah, like it's just letters sticking out in the dark.
Let me read a little bit more about it while you look at that picture as number 2. Okay. Pepsi Cola has already partnered with this company because they're interested in, they have a specific product they want to put up. It's some kind of new energy drink they plan on launching. So these are going to be launching in 2020, operational by 2021. And so it's actually going to happen. This is going to be a thing.
I'm sorry. Okay, well, first of all, I'm going to comment on. Of course, it's Coca-Cola.
I don't want this.
That was even the brand that was heavily promoted in Blade Runner. But yeah, I don't. Well, going back to how you shared your sort of interest in the cross. You're not religious, Chris, per se, but you just kind of liked how it looked. You liked how the majestic sort of nature of it, and it just was interesting to look at. I agree. I don't like the idea of advertisements being in our sky, and yet there's even that photo, even that like rendering of just seeing the Coke logo up in the sky is kind of oddly cozy and weird, and I suppose inevitable. But yeah, this is an interesting. I don't know how I feel about it.
That's exactly how I say. Like I feel like if there was a limited space in which these things would pop up.
You could only have one per town or something.
Yeah, like there couldn't be. It can't get to that thing where it's like a million pop-ups in the sky. That's where I would.
It's like goodbye stars.
It all starts here. It all starts here with one.
Let me read about the tech behind it here.
I don't think there's any stopping this kind of thing. We will get to a point where we can project advertisements on the moon. But go ahead.
Can you go back to the other timeline now?
No, we will. We'll go back in the past. It ain't much better back there, though. We'll talk about that.
So the ads or other messages will only be visible during morning or evening twilight hours because the design of the billboard. The advertisements, which obviously won't be on anything close to a real billboard, will be made up of a series of CubeSats, which are miniature satellites.
Series of cubes.
That will deploy mylar sails, which will in turn reflect sunlight. Each CubeSat reflecting sunlight with its sail will make up one of the pixels of the rearrangeable system that will generate the ads. The twilight time slot for the ads will be due to this need for sunlight bouncing off the sails as well as a darkened sky.
Wow, these things are going to need to be massive. So this is actually up in space. Now, in the photo, it just looks like it's floating over the city. But we're talking about something that's reflecting the sun, which means it's out of the atmosphere, or at least the ionosphere. It's
going to be between 250 and 310 miles above sea level.
Mm-hmm. How big is the thing?
It doesn't say.
CubeSat.
Wow.
Break it down.
Yeah, it's creepy and cozy all at the same time. Like looking out and just seeing that thing floating in the sky seems charming in a weird way. And
I don't like it.
Yeah. No, I think there's way more. There's way more to dislike here than there's to like.
No,
I don't like it.
And it's only a matter of time before someone launches their own Skywiener. I mean, let's be honest. What is it going to be, a year?
Oh my God.
I give it a year before we get a Skywiener.
For Lylepalooza, I'm launching a Skywiener.
And tonight we launch Skywiener 1.0. How far we'll go, we can't know.
It's only a matter of time before someone hacks the frickin' guidance system and makes it, like you said, a giant dick or a fucking swastika or some shit up there.
And then we're just stuck with it. We're just Yeah, pranksterism will always be right behind technology. But this captures my imagination. So I'm like, obviously advertising is... God, is that really going to make you buy a Coke, though? This is what I don't get.
It'll make you talk about it, right?
Sure, but does the talking about it make you buy a Coke? It must. It must. Otherwise, you're not going to spend $1 billion to put a 500... I'm dying to know how big the thing is up in space.
I don't know. I don't buy soda anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's the power of suggestion, you know. If it's somebody, you're talking to somebody like that, and you're hot and it's outside, and you're like, yeah, man, I'd really like a nice cold water. That's gonna, it's.
Or would you prefer a Coca-Cola?
Depends on which side of the sky I'm looking toward. Yeah, we're gonna have to figure this out, man, because we're gonna have to get some strict laws in place. But how big of a bummer would it be if you go out to watch a lunar eclipse, and just before the magic hour, this thing sort of floats right in front of it. You're like, God
damn it! It's totally gonna happen.
Yeah, like
this is the worst.
Yeah, it is the worst, but it's inevitable. I just went on my little rant about fucking YouTube ads. Good Lord, think of how simply that started. I'm just like, oh, what the fuck is this? They're doing ads now? Oh, no biggie. I'll just click that little X and on my way. And all of a sudden there's another little X, and then all of a sudden there's an unskippable 5-second, slippery slope shit, sure. But we're heading there. We are heading towards shit being in the sky. And that's the future. That's what the future always looked like. So we can't say they didn't warn us, right? This looks like... It's funny because if you close your eyes and you picture... Blade Runner. The original Blade Runner was set in Los Angeles, if I'm not mistaken. Like, just a few years in the future from now, right? Like 2020.
I think it was 2015. Honestly,
2015. Oh, that's funny. It's in the past.
Yeah.
But when you look at this picture and there's that one logo in the sky, it kind of looks like. You remember on Back to the Future, he drove to his old neighborhood, but it was just starting, and they only had like the gates, like the lions of the gates built. Mm-hmm. I feel like we've gone back to the past and seen the very start of Blade Runner. The next thing will be a barge floating in. And we've talked about this on old episodes of the show where, more and more we're going to have barges carrying Amazon packages.
Amazon's going to do it first. They're going to have their little floating drone motherships.
Yeah. And once we're used to something floating around in the sky, it's game on. And of course, if they're flying a drone or they're flying a big mothership in there, why not have an illuminated sign saying this is the Amazon ship? Order now to get something right down to your porch, and it's off to the races.
It's the same thing we did with blimps.
Yeah, and that's why we have 30 blimps in every city. Being a jerk. The Hindenburg kind of did it in for blimps, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like, they were chief at one point. And it's funny, like, what was that, 100 years ago? That had to have been close to 100 years ago. When the fuck? We did an episode on the Hindenburg. It's funny how we don't retain all this information. Yeah, that was an amazing episode. But, God, is that footage... It's so burned into our brains. Like, can you... you couldn't get on...
Oh, the humanity.
Any kind of blimp these days without thinking about that, right? Like 100 fucking years ago. Oh, the humanity. And I think a lot of what made it memorable was that dude. We talked about him on that show, too. I remember looking up the history of that guy and how he lives on in infamy with his incredibly emotional and unprofessional in all the right ways response to what was happening. Because I think a lot of people would be like, oh, no, this is terrible. It's crashed. And the dude was fucking bawling. Like, oh, no. This is absolutely terrible. In that old-timey voice. It's so locked in time.
That was 82 years ago. And it was
82 fucking years ago. Good Lord. And we'll never look at... We do have blimps. I feel like we only use blimps for football games now. Like, they're kind of just icons. Mascots. A very limited thing. But who knows? Maybe we'll bring them back. They seem pretty efficient, actually. If you pair one of those, like one of those big helium balloons with a drone, like the kind they fly at hockey games to get you on the kissing cam, let a bigger one of those, like you could do some, I don't know, interesting things with that. Anywho, yeah, that's the future. Say goodbye to your stars, folks. Enjoy them while you can. But no one cares. No one looks up. I'm convinced
Welcome to
that
a
no
floating
one looks
future.
to the heavens anymore.
I was going to say that was going to be one good thing about it is the fact people will be able to look up in the sky more.
Yeah.
Never know what to see, but then you're going to probably just see the broken ones that were busted up and
What
flying around orbit that are just burning up in the atmosphere.
Yeah, right. How much junk, reflective, glowing junk is this going to cost? That's a great point. But what I love about this illustration is how dramatic the stars are. Like, they know that they're about to fuck up our star field, right? So that looks like the stars from a Star Wars poster. Like, over that city on no day, son. But they're like, no, trust us. We won't harm nature at all. But again, I think 90% of the population won't give two shits because we ain't outside, let alone looking up. Well, weird times. What are we becoming?
It is. Totally.
It's funny how a lot of your news stories somehow inadvertently tie in to some degree with what I'm bringing as my soup de jour. And this kind of does, because we will go back to a simpler time, but more fucked up. So life is a trade-off. Any other news before we get moving on?
Oh, yeah. A little recap on what was going on with the whole raid in Area 51.
Oh, right.
Oh.
Yeah, it's in 2 days. It starts in 2
shit.
days. So yeah, it's among us. So, but they changed it from the whole storming the gates into it's a music festival. The music festival is going to be named Alien Stock. And it's going to run from the 19th to the 22nd of September.
Okay.
They've actually got sponsors, dude. They got Bud Light's going to sponsor the event.
Well, fuck yeah. This thing has got such a ridiculous amount of press and free advertising. And free advertising all over Facebook. Yeah,
they're going to have Arby's there, and it's they're all going to. Arby's is going to be sent in a food truck.
They got fucking Arby's, bro.
Popeyes, get the fuck out.
So anyway, it's a lot of reports that's coming from the Little Alien, so it's going to be kind of cool. And rumors suggest that maybe Limp Bizkit might be performing live.
Shit.
Wow. Oh my God, you're shitting me.
No, I wouldn't.
Gotta go.
A little Wookie Nookie? Good Lord. Are we we're doomed, right? Like we're doomed with what we do.
Yeah.
So are they?
The probing.
Are they just? Is the plan to storm the gates, so to speak, just falling apart?
I think what they just decided to do is because they're harboring over too many people.
Yeah.
That originally signed up for it. They just said, you know what, fuck it. We got all this land. We have all this stuff. Let's just have a rock fest. You know, it's kind of, in a sense, for that small town. I mean, you've been there. It's just a small town.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not even a town. It's
the revenue's not there, and the people that do make money off of it still are just looky-loos that travel through.
The Little Alien is literally in a mobile home.
Yeah,
like it's a restaurant in a mobile home off the side of the road, and all around it is other trailers that aren't businesses. It's not even a real town. Yeah.
So anyway, it's going to be a good shot in the arm for a little bit of money for the town for sure.
Yeah, I'm so glad I went out there when I did, because we saw like maybe two other people out there in the middle of the fucking desert in the summer with like little maps, just like we had, just finding the landmarks. You know, like the black mailbox, which isn't black anymore. Both guard shacks. You know, you found your way to all the things. And it was like this magical voyage, and it's about to start becoming touristy.
Well, and I hate to tell you this, but there's some about that whole decor that is going to be missing, because part 2 of that story is that they're taking down the extraterrestrial highway sign.
Oh, that is a bummer. I got a picture of my ass.
It's actually gone.
Sticking
out. They've already taken it down.
Well, it used to get stolen a lot. Well, there's 2 of them.
It definitely, that's what they said. It was stolen. It was one of the most stolen signs in the state of Nevada. But the thing is they didn't want a lot of. Dude, there's going to be a lot of people going down to this thing in 2 days, and they didn't want traffic stopped by people just taking pictures in front of the sign.
It's going to be gross because we're gross.
To take it down and
use condoms on the side of the road, beer bottles, trash. Taco Bell wrappers. Yeah, like I said, I'm glad I went out there when I did, which was, 10 years ago? More than that. Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see if this turns into a real festival, but Area 51 is damaged goods, right? Like everyone fucks it now.
Well, and you know exactly what's going to probably happen is that they will probably do more land rights, and they will block it out or move it out. You know, enough where there's no way anybody's going to be able to get it there.
Yeah.
It's just the way it goes, you know, unless they just close down the facility and move somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, most experts believe that Area 51 has long since moved all their real top secret shit to other facilities. And they're still working there, but they're doing more mundane activities. So I agree with that, because even way before this, much publicity and touristy sort of things being planned around there's a lot of eyes on Area 51. So how much secrety shit could they possibly be doing?
Would you say that there was 20 eyes?
I would say that there was maybe 20 eyes.
Well, like, speaking of aliens and UFOs and zombies and live music,
the Misfits,
tie all that in together by talking about seeing the Misfits on Saturday night.
Yeah. And
that was something that I never thought was going to happen.
Yeah, because they said it was never going to happen.
Right. And it's kind of funny because when the show was announced, I was originally thinking, I don't know, but the Damned was on the bill, and the Damned has kind of been one of my bucket list bands for a long time, and I don't know why.
You'd never seen them before?
Freaking 30 years to see them? No. But so my friend called me up, my friend Kevin, you know Kevin as well, Kevin Nicholas.
Oh, yeah.
He called me up and we were chit-chatting. He's like, yeah, what do you think about this Misfits show? And I was like, I don't know, man. I kind of want to go, but I kind of, it's kind of probably going to be a train wreck or whatever. And he's like, he finally said something like, fuck it, I'm buying tickets. And I was like, oh, cool. And I couldn't, the way he said it, I couldn't tell if he was saying, I'm buying us tickets and we're going to go, or if, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so but it felt like that. And so I was like, I think Kevin's buying me a ticket to the Misfits show. And then like the night before, I'd kind of forgotten about it, honestly. And the night before, he calls me up. He's like, "Hey, what's going on?" I was like, "Yeah, what's happening?" It's like, "Fucking Misfits tomorrow." I was like, "All right, so we're doing this. Cool." There was, who else on the band? The Distillers and the Cro-Mags, and we didn't care about them at all. So we just kind of like shot the shit while both those bands were playing and just watched The Damned. And then when the Misfits came on, and it was like they played. I mean, what song could they play that you didn't want to hear, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, obviously they didn't play every single song they ever like wrote when they were back together, 40 years ago.
Right.
But it was damn close.
Was there anything that they didn't play that you would have loved to have heard?
I wanted them to play Devil Lock, but they did not play Devil Lock. Or Attitude. They did not play Attitude either.
Oh, that surprises me.
Which I was surprised as well, but they played pretty much every other song that you would ever want to hear.
Yeah.
I think it was like 22 songs. Honestly, I was like, did they play that song? I don't even
Like
remember they played that
minutes.
because it was like every song, like you knew by heart and everybody else did too. And like the whole place was just like all going like, whoa, whoa, at the top of their lungs all at the same time. And it was
I heard,
it was amazing.
I watched your footage and I watched some other people's footage and I was like, I got to hear Danzig doing the Misfits voice, because his Misfits voice was different than the Danzig voice.
It's a little different, yeah.
But it was the perfect hybrid.
Yeah.
No pun intended. And I thought it sounded great.
They played that song.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
Hybrid Moments. Yeah, I know they played it, and I was like,
with me.
holy shit, no way, because I didn't expect them to play that for some reason, but they played that and Some Kind of Love or Some Kind of Hate. Yeah, it was great. And I don't know, I wasn't sure who was playing drums because I hadn't really been paying attention to what their kind of reunion lineup was, but it was fucking Dave Lombardo from Slayer.
Really?
Yeah.
That's unexpected. Wow, that's a hell of a drummer playing Misfits shit.
He was introducing the band, and he was like, "Yeah, and on drums, Mr. Dave Lombardo." I was like, "What? Are you fucking kidding me?"
Wow. Huh.
Yeah, but it was kind of weird to see them with this giant production happening.
I thought so too. Yeah,
because they had all these crazy lights and fucking Halloween pumpkin monster things and like video screens. But it was cool because the video screens behind them had all this footage from like Plan 9 from Outer Space and all that kind of shit playing, and it was fucking great.
It's probably what they would have been doing in the 70s and early 80s if they had more than $9 for
if they could have afforded it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So overall, though, it was just it was like I was really glad that I got to see that. And I mean, I've been a huge Danzig / Misfits fan since I was like fucking 18, so.
Yeah, I've seen Danzig 2 or 3 times at this point, and never seen the Misfits. Yeah, they didn't play very often.
When you saw Danzig, did you go to one of those shows where Doyle was there and they did some Misfits tunes, or did you skip that one?
No, I think the last time I saw him was right before that show.
Oh, okay.
Or that tour, I should say.
I couldn't remember if you actually.
You were supposed to go with me to one of those.
Yeah, I was.
Why you didn't? But that was a crazy fucking night. There's like that was one of those huge windstorm nights in Wenatchee where like trees were falling over. And I'm like driving through this. It was like 4:00, so it was dark. It was in I think November, and I was driving over there, and I'm like, the whole world is ending, and I'm driving to this concert at night alone. But it couldn't have been a more perfect concert to do that.
Yeah.
Anywho, good stuff.
Times.
Yeah.
Yep.
Something about getting older. You bury the hatchet, and you're like, fuck it, let's go out and do a Misfit show.
Oh, one thing I do want to talk about is real quick, is Jerry Only. We're just watching the show, and I kind of glanced over to one side of the stage or something, and like out of the corner of my eye, I looked back real quick because he had crossed to the other side that I wasn't looking at. And right when I looked back, it looked like the crowd was all fighting over something, and just like a split second, I see like this whole giant bass guitar go like down into the crowd, and I was like, did he just fucking throw his bass into the crowd?
Yeah.
And Kevin was like, yes, he did.
Wow.
And then over the course of the show, he proceeded to smash like 4 other basses. Like it was fucking crazy. I'd never seen anything like it, man. Anyways, yeah, good times.
Stuff. Well, he went. Good Lord, this is going to be a long show. They're all long now, I guess. But he went Christian, which
for a little while
surprised everybody. And he started like a Christian like weird metal group called Christ the Conqueror.
Yeah.
Christ with a K, I believe.
KRYST.
And then when he reformed the Misfits with, well, reform's the wrong word. He basically rebooted the Misfits, and he was the only original member. Like they were doing like slightly like family friendly versions of those songs, and I didn't follow the band during those years, but I couldn't imagine how you sing. Hack the heads off little girls and put them on my wall, or it's heaven coming on her chest.
Yeah.
As like, do they just pick the B-movie songs that don't have the? There's very few Misfits songs that just automatically came as family-friendly songs, and I was like, this is weird, man. This is like Kmart Misfits, and so is he? Is he just going along with the old Misfits? Like, this was not a watered-down version, I'm guessing, because he would never would have got Glenn on board.
This is a full meal deal, yeah.
Well, maybe he's back on the Satan side, or he's just like, fuck it. I'm saved. I'm going to heaven. Whatever you kids want to sing along to, I'm going to cash this paycheck all the same.
I could use some more cash, exactly, yeah.
Yep. I'm Jerry only. Only I'm broke, Jerry. Yeah, I was deeply disappointed that I wasn't at that show, especially as I saw the footage rolling in, because I was skeptical too. I was like, how good could it be? I saw Danzig a few years ago, and it was fucking great. His voice sounded better than the time I saw him before. I read somewhere that he had given up dairy, and that allowed him to hit those higher notes that
Interesting.
He wasn't able to do. And he sounded fucking potent when I saw him the last time. Didn't play much of the classic shit. It was more of, like How the Gods Kill On. But about 4 or 5 of the songs that you really wanted to hear.
Yeah, like you were saying, the Misfits voice and the Danzig voice is kind of 2 different things.
Yeah.
But he sounded, like you would want him to sound, obviously, singing Misfits songs.
Yeah, I thought so too with the footage
they
I saw.
They did Mommy, Can I Go Out and Kill Tonight? And Kevin looked at me and he was like, this fucking sounds just like the record, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, someone posted Mommy, and I was like, wow, he's got that bitey. What I loved about the Misfits, they were just a fucking catchy band, but they had all these, like, they sung about corpses and artificial insemination and alien rape and all the good stuff, and the B-movie imagery and all that shit. But I loved Danzig's, like, he sounded like almost like a Chihuahua on steroids. Chihuahua. It was like, I remember the first time I got my hands on a Misfits lyric sheet, I was like, that's what he's fucking saying? It's like, holy shit, right? I'm going to hell.
Yeah.
But he's going first. Anyway, well, let's get on to my soup de jour, unless there's anything else you guys need to get off your chest. It's heaven coming on her chest.
Chapter 1. The Birth of Entertainment.
We always hear tales of the ancient Romans when it comes to, or atrocious entertainment, shall we say. Going to the Colosseum to watch men being torn apart by hungry lions, solely for sport, eventually. And there's some truth in these stories, some exaggeration, of course, but some of it might just be straight up myth, which we'll get to. But there's no question that we, as a species, have a strange fascination with violence and death, and of course sex, as a source of escapism, as entertainment. This is true on a much different level. Move to the present and you have things like Game of Thrones. I think that's a good place to start in terms of, like, a modern sensibility. Think about all the fucked up things we have seen on that one TV show, right? Like everything, sure. Like all the horrors and tragedies and pain you could ever imagine, and maybe never should have imagined. Looking at you, Mr. Martin. But also all the pleasures of life, of course, the dramas and the winnings. It's all in there. But would we ever have cared about that show if it wasn't so fucked up? Like, keep all the drama and the compelling politics and all that interesting. But what made it Game of Thrones is that it was not afraid to take you to places that you were like, there's no way we're going here.
Yeah.
And then we went there.
Boom shakalaka.
It's so fucked up. I mean, there's royal incest butt fucking in the first episode, for the love of Pete. Episode 1.
Spoiler.
But it's not just violence and entertainment I want to discuss tonight, but all sorts of wacky things that we have done to entertain ourselves since the dawn of time. I'm kind of going to leave porn as a side note. I'm sorry, Chris. If even a side note, because I think that speaks to something a little different. Not that you couldn't call it entertainment per se, but I just feel like it's a separate topic. However, there will be sexual deviancy in this discussion, but you could essentially break entertainment into a few categories, and porn is, I think, one of them, right?
Sure.
But there's passive entertainment, like watching a game or sport or a TV show or play or listening to music, and then there's interactive, like fucking or playing games, which I think is just a separate chat. Anyway, let's get back to the earliest forms of entertainment as we know. Of course, we know that as long as cave people were able to scribble shit onto a wall, that stories have been written. And many experts believe that most of what we're seeing on these hieroglyphics and cave scrawlings around the globe are actually stories and legends. You know, some of it is ceremonial or documentation of some type, but much of what we find in the earliest glyphs, and certainly in the earliest texts, is creative. Like, it's meant to dazzle. And I love the thought that even cave people needed escapism. Right? Like, these people were essentially camping for eternity, which is what many of us do when we need to escape. Once people were able to speak, stories immediately became one of the reasons that more people wanted to learn how to speak. You know, you'd have a tribe gathering at sunset to hear Papa Cave Dweller talking about unlucky Gary or whatever. And you wouldn't want to be the only one not knowing how the story ended. So entertainment was something we found almost immediately as a fledgling species in the early civilized era. It not only made us feel things, but it brought us together as a community. It's something that we're starting to lose to some degree in the modern age, I think. You know, we've been talking about concerts tonight. That, to me, we still have movies, of course. We still go to the theaters. But more and more, at one point, we had to go out. We had to go to the movie theater. We had to see a band. We had to go to a venue to see a band play live. Now we have a version of everything on our phones that we can scroll up in bed. So, of course, we're doing those sort of communal things less and less. Although I will say, there's at least one area where we'd likely all agree that this is actually an improvement, and that's porn. I mean, you used to have to go sit in a cum-stained, crusty seat in some shady, low-rent theater.
Oh, my God. Have you ever done that?
No, but can you imagine how awkward it would be if you, like, just like jerking it and you made eye contact with the dude a few seats down and you're like, oh, I don't know. It's the whole thing, but that's what they did. That's what you had to do. Or, you know, at the very least, you'd go watch it and log it in the spank bank and head home. You're still sitting in some crusty cum seat. Or, you know, after that,
looking down right now like, oh my God.
Well, you're looking at a period where to be private, I mean, the first version of, you know, being able to sit on a computer and looking at porn was going to these places where you had your private booths and you put in money and you flip through. Now, I did this once, the Lusty Lady in Seattle for my bachelor party on my first marriage. My friends took me in there, and it was too late for the stripping, so no one was stripping, but it was still open for the jerk booths. I was like, I gotta at least check this out. So I went in, put my money in, and it's just a TV, and it had like little channels, and one was like black people. The next one was peeing porn, and you just flipped through until you found what you found. It was all analog. You know, this was 1998, 99. And so you just flip through the channels, and I remember making the dreadful mistake of looking down at the floor. And I'm like, oh, I'm out of here. And when I get home, new shoes ASAP. But So, porn should probably never be communal. But I'm open to have my mind changed. Just keep them jizz towels on standby and never, ever carpet your porn booth, which is what they did at the Lusty Lady back in the 90s.
Ew. Was it like a shellac?
Don't go away. It was like... it was like, oh, someone spilled soup once a day for a year. And it
Soup
just
for
sort
days.
of dried.
Oh, yeah.
So the early stories, of course, would have been pretty rudimentary. Grog, pick root, eat root. Grog, dream of root, the end. Root by Grog. It wouldn't have taken much once you would have someone that was just like slightly more evolved, a little higher advanced, and he would be entertaining people. But let's say that one day Grog tripped over the root in his story, cracked his face open, laughs all around the campfire, and violence plus struggle plus failure equals I'm listening. And maybe the next time Grog sees a pretty she-Grog bending over to pick up a root of her own, and he gives the she-Grog his own root. Now you have all the ingredients of a great tale, and I do mean tale. So it's no mystery how we found our way to more and more violence, more struggles, and sex in our stories. I mean, where else are you going to go? But this starts a slippery slope, Sitch, in which... we talk now about being desensitized to sex and violence, but you have to think about all the horrible things that came before us, like all the insanely amazing sexual situations that are in our past. Picture an ancient graveyard. Every bone that is buried in that graveyard, unless they died like super young or were hideous to the eye, every one of those corpses experienced sex on some level. They experienced pain, they witnessed and experienced violence or caused any one of those things in every way that you can imagine, and likely a few ways you couldn't imagine. I was reading a story about some of the sexual practices of the pharaohs, and damn, son, they built entire palaces filled with devices and slaves just for insane fucking scenarios. The Romans and Greeks were all about this shit too. I'm planning on doing an ancient sex show in the not too distant future, because
that's not just going to be about MILF action.
Ancient sex. Your Betty White story. But so it's like, they've been freaks forever. And my point is that nothing's really changed except what is maybe socially acceptable. But even that changes from period to period, state to state, or town to town. We always wanted to be pacified to some degree with our entertainment, but more importantly, we wanted it to affect us somehow. Like, we want to be moved by it. It's not just killing time. There are some shows that we just see. It was like, chuckle shows, we call them. And they're kind of like time wasters. But when we really want to be moved, we want something that's got all of those things. It's hard to really affect somebody with entertainment if it's just silly or if it's just sheer violence. Like, to me, torture porn movies I feel like they're fairly pointless. They're one note, and I don't get a lot out of them. Now, if you can combine, a little bit of comedy, and some horror films try to do this where they set up the thing, and the first act is all goofy, that guy's the goofy one, and then you see him suffering terrible fates. But most American horror films, at least modern ones that I've seen, they don't do that well. It seems to me like a fairly simple recipe of grabbing all of those emotions and fucking with them. But the Romans understood this in terms of entertainment. We want to laugh, we want to cringe, we want to get horny, or we want to be scared, or in many cases we just want to be shocked. And again, the most popular TV shows of our time, mostly based on the latter, like Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, even like Breaking Bad. These shows got so fucked up that when you went back and watched them over again, starting at like episode 1, you're like, wow, this is weak and tame. Whereas when you started it, it was like, holy shit, where's this fucking going? So there is a ramping up to some degree, and we do get desensitized in that sort of way. But I don't know. I feel like we would have walked away from horror flicks or dirty comedies or graphic crime stories or porn a long time ago if there really was this thing where we have this collective desensitizing, you know? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Porn, it seems like porn has gotten a little bit crazier, but then the more you think about it, you're like, there are kings orchestrating, or there were kings orchestrating their own live porn like 300 years ago, 400 years ago, in their chambers at night. Before we had records and CDs, if you wanted to hear music in your room, you had this is where chamber music was born. You had like 3 or 4, maybe 5 or 6 at the most member symphonies, and they would come to your room and just do little symphonies. That's chamber music. This was chamber porn, where you would basically have a dude. He wasn't fucking these girls. It wasn't concubines. He would have couples come in, and he would basically orchestrate them in scenes and just whack it. Or just be entertained by the live sex happening in his room. And there were horses involved. Again, I'll save some of these tales for the ancient sex episode. So who knows? Maybe it's even tamer now. I don't know. But it's funny to think about those early humans figuring shit out, right? Like in the early days, there were no rules, there was no law, no morals, and ethics. They probably had to stumble their way through an awful lot just to arrive at a semi-functioning tribe. And death happened a lot in the dawn of humankind. Really up until 100, 150 years ago, death was really, really way more common. Like you burying your third kid for the year was just something that happened at one point in the Dust Bowl days in the U.S. Not that long ago. Like we have such a different version or idea of death now than we did, again, just like 100, 150 years max, all the way looking back to the dawn of time. It was so common, and it happened so easily. The slightest cut on your toe, you could be dead in 2 days from some infection because there wasn't an ointment. Or if you had some deficiency that now a multivitamin would take care of, you're dead. Not to mention just surviving and finding food. So those two things likely led to a fairly strong stomach concerning violence. You know, watching somebody be killed for entertainment definitely seems to go back to cave person days. You know, once rules started making their way into things, once relationships started becoming a thing, and you weren't just running around sticking your dick into any woman who was bent over picking up a mushroom, giving her the old mushroom, just for the sake of the survival of your species, then you would,
mushroom.
and you'd have some pretty simple human things starting to happen, like real human things, you know, like envy and love and betrayal and emotionally driven anger, as opposed to an animalistic type of anger, if you feel me. You know, like revenge is a very human phenomenon, I would wager. I think an animalistic way of thinking is, I'm going to solve the situation right now, or I'm going to run away from it and maybe be a little bit more cautious next time, but otherwise I'm never going to think about it again. Humans hold on to that shit, and they want to make people suffer. And all of this probably went into the earliest forms of capital punishment. And as long as they've been doing it, people have been showing up to watch. And this may have started, with the wisest person in the tribe saying, well, if we get everyone to watch, they'll learn the lesson. And like, this is what happens to someone who steals somebody's stones. I don't know what the fuck cave people did. I'm not smart enough. And later on, fucked somebody's girl. They didn't have wives back then, but, you know, we started to become what, again, a quote-unquote civilization would become, and all these things. You couldn't be mad about something unless you knew it was something to be mad about. This is what baffles me. It's like, how much of human nature was where we ended up versus how much did we decide as a society that we needed structure, and it's the confines of those structures that made us jealous or vengeful or angry or murderous. You know, I'm always confused on which was which. And maybe there's no real way of knowing, but you would have these public executions, and you quickly found people responding to it in unexpected ways. Like, holy shit, did you see the way his fucking eye popped out of his head with that last stone? And thus, shock value entertainment was born, you know, accidentally, as so many of these things happen.
Chapter 2. Those fucking Romans.
Now, by the time the Romans were holding their notoriously violent doings in the Colosseums, we were essentially a fully civilized creature. You know, we had all these things that the early humans had to figure out, like laws, punishment, morals, and ethics. Again, it could change from town to town, but next we figured out that we tend to function at our best, and we're the most content when we are with like-minded people working together as a community. And there are really two things that you came together for at that time: church and politics, and entertainment. And even the politics in the church realized that you need entertainment to keep people engaged. Now, the Romans really did seem to have the notion of punishment as entertainment dialed in. And, you know, you will see and hear about some of the things that they employed, but we've all heard about lions ripping criminals apart. And honestly, it's pretty tame compared to some of the more clever and entertaining scenarios that they concocted. Although, like I said, most historians believe there wouldn't necessarily have been lions in Rome. If there was, it would have been an exotic thing. So most likely these would have been leopards of some sort, or even wild boars. And they absolutely did have dozens and dozens of cages where they kept these creatures starved and constantly prodded so that they were ready to tear into any meat that got within their fucking eyesight that they would have encountered out on that arena floor. And sometimes when they had no criminals to punish or interesting humans to tear apart in general, they would simply throw a starving bear in with a starving leopard and see who won, placing bets on it, of course. Gambling surrounded everything back then. Still does in a lot of ways, I suppose, but we'll be talking a little bit more about the animal violence for entertainment in a bit. But one amusing way to watch some unfortunate or maybe deserving individual die is the Roman teeter-totter. And just as it sounds, this was, these were 20 to 30 foot teeter-totters, and a man would be tied on each end. They weren't told what was going to happen. You know, they just were tied to a teeter-totter, so they would just kind of like bobble there a little bit, and they were confused, and the crowd would be confused when they first implemented this, and so they just sort of hung out for a bit, and then eventually, one by one, they started to release the creatures out of the gates, usually starving leopards for this particular one. But sometimes they would do this with one. If they had a lion, they would save it for the last round. Now, suddenly, the men on the teeter-totter had a lot more gumption, as you can imagine, to get that thing moving. So it became a game of timing. One man would launch himself up, which of course would leave the other one crashing to the ground and right into the leopard's hungry mouth. But this was a short-lived victory, of course, because what's going to happen when the meat on the other end of that log is ripped off? You're going down, son, and you're not getting back up, not on any kind of reasonable height. So this would go on for some time, and they would basically just place bets on who the last one living would be. Can you imagine this sight, like grown men like teeter-tottering to try to avoid being eaten?
Ugh. Wow.
It'd be surreal because it would look like children playing.
Yeah,
but of course, a much more sinister reason for teetering with such vigor. At some point, they did get the notion to start leaving one survivor. And this is where the idea of gladiators or champions in the arena was born. And this was the earliest form of sports fanaticism, if you think about it. And you would get your favorites, and you would show up to root for them or to root against the enemy, even if that enemy was a wild boar or a couple of starving leopards. Root or bet on who would survive. Although, when you watch the Seattle Seahawks take a beating, you get another go at it next Sunday. The stakes are obviously higher in this arena. Let me shut my cat up real quick. Did you find a sock? How did I know you found this out? Was that coming through the microphone at all?
I didn't hear it.
Yeti
I wish I would have, though.
Yeti and Betty both do this thing. I've never had any other cat do it, but when they find a sock laying on the ground, they pick it up and they carry it around like it's a kitten in their mouth, and they make this very specific what the fuck is that about? I need to look into them shits. But it's rooted in some sort of parental thing from what I've heard. Anyway, it's borderline creepy when you can't see. But I always know when they got a sock. Anywho, in keeping with the analogy of modern sports, much like we have sponsors and event organizers, ancient Romans did as well. These were called editors. They're usually powerful, rich, elite people, of course, crafting these devious games, just aspiring politicians. And they wanted to come across as the craftiest and most powerful and most dangerous politician in the city. So they would pay for the privilege of sponsoring the games, just like Coca-Cola floating up in the sky would pay to sponsor the Super Bowl. And these events weren't just gladiators and animals, but also theater. You know, they were circuses and trained animals on parade. They'd have exotic creatures from around the known world, which wasn't much at the time. And of course, I suppose you could call them the cheerleaders of the day, the whores who, for at least at one particular point in time, would come and service you right in the stand as you watched the games. This is insane because you could...
What a time to be alive, you know?
I know. You could be a 7-year-old kid sitting 2 feet away from some dude getting his cock sucked.
Blowjobs. Get your blowjobs here.
It's basically what it was like. And if that got boring, you just go back to watching someone getting his arm torn off by a starved leopard. Yeah, hell of a time to be alive. The entertainment meets punishment factor went so far in Rome as to some of the events featuring stories or recreations of famous deaths from history or legends. Like they would recreate these theatrically. In one case, they trained an eagle for months. They trained this one eagle to pluck out the eye of someone in a specific way so they could retell the story of Prometheus. Yeah, fascinating stuff.
Wow. I mean, how do you even do that? How many motherfuckers lost an eye in those training sessions?
Yeah, probably quite a few. But I imagine that there'd be, a lost nose, or maybe a poked eardrum, or maybe just a scuffed up scalp along the way until they finally got the old hang of it. But they had all the time in the world and all the money in the world. This was the Roman fucking Empire, and they just did what they wanted. The absolute picture of hedonism.
Chapter 3: Sports and Violence.
A few clicks down the wheel of insanity, you will get something like bullfighting, and which is something that continues to this day in many countries. I don't think it's legal in the U.S. If it's legal, they don't do it because of it just seems like a bad idea. But I don't think it's legal. But you can still.
Is there any animal fighting at all that's legal in the States? I don't believe there is.
I don't think so.
Right?
No.
Yeah.
But you can
the end
still.
result of the bull usually dies. So the animal laws and stuff like that.
Yeah, the bull always dies. I mean, it's like that's the point. But you can buy a ticket and take a seat and watch a man slowly and painfully kill a bull, or maybe watch a man get a horn shoved through his brain as part of your evening entertainment package. I don't know how many of our listeners actually know what goes down in a bullfight, but I can tell you this. I've watched some footage. Bugs Bunny lied to us. It's not simply outsmarting a bull for a couple of rounds with a red cape and maybe a cleverly hidden anvil or two. It's a pretty terrible scenario, and yeah, some of the video haunts me to this day. But I can watch a guy get gored to death by one of these bulls with no problem.
It's different, huh?
Yeah, but it amazes me that these arenas are still being filled, and these matadors are national heroes. You know, a lot of people do protest these in the countries where it's legal, but the fact that it is still such a prolific and successful sport kind of blows my mind. But this is why we're talking about this. Like, what is this? What makes witnessing these things entertaining? Because I get why my dad watches hunting videos, right? Like he's a hunter, and we all do this. We watch videos, we read magazines, we all want to live in the world of our hobbies and our interests, even when we're not necessarily doing them. But I don't think he's actually getting something enjoyable out of watching an elk take an arrow to the chest outside of technique and just maybe like, oh, I can't wait to go up and hunting. Maybe he is. Maybe I'm wrong. But a lot of the fans going to bullfights aren't necessarily getting joy out of watching the bull suffering and being killed, but they simply enjoy the thrill of watching that man survive. I get that aspect of it, but ultimately, I don't know how you separate, the animal cruelty with the sport. But we have a famous event up here in our neck of the woods called the world-famous suicide race. And that's part of the OMAC Stampede in Omac.
Is it Okanagan that happens?
It's in Omac, which is right next to Okanagan.
Okay.
It's just a couple hours from here, and they've been doing this since the 60s or 70s, I believe. And it's simply a bunch of men. I think you have to be Native American to take part in the race. I may be wrong about that, or maybe you used to and that's changed. I don't know. But you simply ride a horse, bareback if I'm not mistaken, over a cliff and down it's a short hill, but it's incredibly steep. And then that goes right into a rushing river that leads into the rodeo arena. Now, my first wife was from Omac. So I saw this firsthand a couple of times, but the first year that I was there, they had to kill one of the horses on the hill because it was so badly injured. So that's
common, right? That happens all the time, right?
It doesn't happen as much as you would think, but it happens. And the first time I was there, it happened. But it's kind of a similar thing. Like, we don't necessarily want the animals to die. I didn't enjoy watching this. It was exciting. I was like, but once they put a horse down, I was like, all right, I'm out. But I think people in general don't necessarily want the animals to suffer. But there's this thirst for possible injury or possible death, both from the animal and from the rider. I think we think about the human aspect of it, and that overrides our part of the brain that's like, let's stop thinking about the animal. Some of us do anyway. I don't know. I never went back to the Stampede after we divorced, and it was never my thing to begin with. I can enjoy a rodeo now and again. Like, I get some of that, but is that really all that different? Because animals do get hurt during rodeos. They certainly don't seem to be enjoying a lot of it. And there's the horse stuff where they're like, competition horse, that's a whole different thing. Because you can tell that those horses bond with their trainers, and they're playing, like they're having fun together. That's not what I'm talking about. But like bronco busting and bull riding, animals get hurt, but humans definitely die when something goes haywire in a fucking rodeo. Like, do you know what they do to make those bulls angry? If they're not wild enough, they'll rope their balls, pull them up as part of their rein, and feed that under the saddle, and that's what they tug on. Or they'll just like give them a swift kick in the balls. Sometimes, not every rodeo does this, but they're basically, I remember the first time I went to that rodeo, we were sitting right behind the bull chutes, and it's nuts. These bulls are fucking insane, and they're like a cartoon bull. They're like steaming out their fucking nose, and they're like kicking the ground. They're kicking the wall, which you're right next to, like, and they're like, like they're just fucking livid. Like, why am I in this fucking thing? And then all of a sudden, the dude climbs on top of it, and they let go. And yeah, for that 3 to 8 seconds, it's insanely exciting. And then the second they're off, the rodeo clown has to come out there and stop them from destroying you. It's thrilling and exciting, and I know on some level why it is, but it's also hard to put on paper why it is. And it's one of those things where we're coming more and more to terms with this, is maybe even these things are barbaric. Well, certainly pissing off an animal and harming it to make it more exciting as you try to ride it for 5 seconds for entertainment. Yeah, I think more and more of us are agreeing that may be, there may be better ways to spend a Sunday afternoon. But I do think that enjoying these kinds of events is some sort of diluted holdover from the days of the Coliseum. It has to be, right? Like, am I wrong?
Yeah.
What do you guys think? What do you guys think about rodeos or bullfighting in general? Not that they're the same thing, but I wager that they come from the same galaxy.
I can see like rodeos, like displaying like it's like a competition of skill, like riding horses and doing things where kind of, where I can see where it came from being a thing. And I don't, as far as bull riding goes, that's not, and it just seems kind of like, part of my expression, bullshit.
Very good.
But I think most of the stuff in rodeos, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like regular rodeos, they're just people. It's person and horse. They're doing a thing.
Yep.
But when you get into the stuff like what you were talking about, the stampede and some other weird kind of shit like that, it's like, I don't know. Probably shouldn't be doing that, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it just leans on the more side of tradition. Like my father was brought up in Palisades, dude, like in the 50s. So you can imagine there's like less than a handful of people there, and they used to ride horses and stuff to school.
Wow.
So, well, I mean, think about it. It's still the 50s. There's still cars out there. There's still people out there in town. That have running water and stuff like that. But it's like the way he grew up. It was kind of more back in the day thing. And it was, they used to go to barn. They'd hold events out and stuff like that, like dance
sock
and stuff.
hops. Mm-hmm.
That were outside of the school system. So it was like it was. It was a community. A lot
tradition comes into a lot of this. Like that's a lot of why the Native Americans. This is a predominantly Native American area. It's on a reservation where this thing is held, and that's one of the things that they stand on is, look, this is part of our heritage. This is, although it's not really. I mean, maybe there was some Native American thing where they all rode their horses over a cliff, but the Omak Stampede is a very commercial. I mean, it's a modern day invention. But that doesn't stop them from standing on ceremony.
There's a lot of Native American Indians that, on the Puget Sound that hunt whales. The whales are illegal to hunt. You can't do that, but they have, regulations that let them do, their hunts every year. It's regulated. It's one of those things that's always watched, but it's because it's, part of their lineage. It's, they're trying to keep their old ways alive still. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. Well, I think we do tend to be more polarized when animals are involved. But let's take something like boxing or martial arts, or for the love of God, UFC. The UFC gets fucking brutal, right? Like, I mean, say what you want about boxing. But boxing really is a technical sport more than anything. Like not that UFC isn't about athleticism or point scoring and that sort of thing, but like a boxing match can end and you don't know who won until the ref tells you. UFC, well, who lost, son. Let's just put it that way. Like, real well who fucking lost. So we have things like that, and then we have things like, why is our favorite part of the hockey game where they beat the living shit out of each other?
Dude, that is so accurate. Like, I'm not a violent dude, but the second those gloves come off, I'm like, kill that motherfucker. I don't know what it is.
That's what I want to know. That's what that was the point of me looking in. It's like, what is this thing? Like, that's the question. What is it? Because we all feel, well, we don't all feel it. I mean, some people, I'm sure, are repulsed when they see a fight break out at a hockey arena, or they would never watch a UFC match. But what about people that go to NASCAR? And somewhere in the back of their heads, are we going to see someone fucking crashing? It's all tied together somehow, right? Like, what is that? What is it when we kind of hope to see something fucked up? What is that calling back?
Chapter 4. Reality shows. And just plain reality.
Let's move on to some things that we have kind of turned into a show that really wasn't meant to be a show. Now, in the 1800s, it was a regular practice for insane asylums to open their doors for paying tourists. And you just walk through and gawk at all the unfortunate as if it were a fucking zoo. Now, this started as a way of studying doctors and psychoanalysts to get, live firsthand experience with cases of all sort. But somewhere along the line, somebody realized that the shocking nature of what these places were was entertaining, and it could be big money. So The doctors at some of these hospitals would even go so far as to prop up some of these patients in poses and scenarios, almost like little scenes.
Oh my God, no!
Like provoking some sort of outburst, and it's sort of akin to how when you go to the otter pool at 12:45 because you know they're going to be feeding them. It's going to be more interesting to look at. They would do shit like that. They'd even let some of the hospitals would even let you in on some of the treatment, quote unquote, procedures like lobotomies. You could go in and see someone lose their frontal lobe, or witness someone pissing themselves during a session of shock therapy, just for like $5. You coughed up $5, and you can just walk into a room and witness it. Isn't that nuts? Like, this went on all the way up into the early 50s when people started protesting. Again, in the late 1800s, there's a brief trend in which people were paying good money for tours through the slums of their city. It was called slum tourism. Again, this started as a type of like a program to make people thankful for what they have, and someone exploited it because they saw the potential, and it became something of a rustic urban camping. This is actually where we get the phrase, by the way, slumming it. Like roughing it. Oh, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, we went slumming it. It was a grand old time. We saw how the poor folk lived. It was so exotic. In one instance, one lady ended up being stabbed by a man that she was sketching. She found him so pathetic that she started crying and basically like saying, like, "Oh my God, you're so pathetic. I have to capture this for my tea party tomorrow." And he was like, "Fuck you, cunt." Put a fucking knife in her. Killed her.
I respect that.
Fucking high society gal just thought she had the right to stop and sketch this poor creature as part of her slumming it event. This is sort of like the reverse of the whole tours to stars homes. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
it was a thing. So much so that high society bars started to do their decors as like bohemian, low-end coffee shops. Like all the fancy, Copacabana type things became like downtrodden, stripped down. To this day, that's what most coffee shops look like. That's because at some point, the hoity-toity thing became embarrassing, and we're like, let's pretend, if only as an exotic exercise, to slum it. To this day, we use a lot of that decor in places that are trying to be, like for the everyday Joe. Freak shows, they all started with tours of hospitals and stories in the penny press newspapers about fellows like the Elephant Man or Lobster Boy and the Siamese Twins. Every time one of these stories ran, they noticed they were selling a shitload more papers. So the traveling circuses started adding a few of these sideshow freaks to their shows, and it just took off. Many times, the Elephant Man attracted more people and more dollars than actual elephants. And on the topic of the penny press, this is how we got the gossip rags and tabloids. The first paper presses made newspapers that were basically sold for around 7 to 8 cents. This made them a luxury item. So the papers catered to the elite, with stories on global economics, politics, real estate, and fine art news, the occasional highbrow comic. But when the cheaper presses were made, they could sell these on pulp cheaper paper for a penny, which made them affordable to almost everyone. And but they found that the common folk didn't care about global economics and fine art. They responded to who's sleeping with who in Hollywood, government cover-ups and scandals. And this all later led to the more voyeuristic appetite from the public at large. Let's see what's behind the curtains. It was titillating, as the kids say. Kids who are now all dead. But later on, I think we got some of this into our TV, and this is where we got reality shows, like the earlier versions of reality shows, right? That were semi-real, like The Real World. Big Brother was never real, but these more voyeuristic, where you're just watching people kind of sitting around talking and plotting. And now we have, like modern day, we have entire families that are living on cameras, and you can subscribe. You can pay like $10 a month, and you get cameras in every room in their house. Now, this is different than cam girls or voyeur porn sites in that, yeah, you may see some fucking or pooping at some point, but for the most part, you're just watching these people live their lives, and you're paying for it, and they're very successful. And the question again is why? And of course, there's this, oh boy, I shouldn't be watching this aspect of voyeurism in general, but there's.
For those that don't know, Ron has a bit of a voyeurism kink. Is that right? Is that fair? I don't know. Like, what do you like?
A bit of a voyeurism kink. Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's not creepy. I mean,
yeah, it's not. That's how I would say it. It's not creepy, and then I go, well, and then laugh. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll hold off on that for a minute because we're going to come back to the I got some science on, or a little bit of science on voyeurism that I think that might be a better time to get more into my philosophy on the whole thing, or my stance, because honestly, my type of voyeurism is not tied to sexuality. Not really. Not fully. But anyway, before we get onto there, I want to talk a little bit about the snuff films. I mean, we got to talk about this. Now, the idea of the classic, like 8mm idea of the snuff film is mostly rooted in urban myth as a whole, but we know it exists on some level. I mean, there have been proven cases of people paying for real films of people being tortured, hurt, and killed. And there's that famous Russian case. I know we covered it on Tales from the Space Pod. I can't recall the details, but oh my God, I remember it being horrific. But yeah, you can look it up. Put in Russian snuff film, you'll see it. But be warned, I don't remember seeing any of the footage, but just hearing it described, it also involves kitties. I'm going to throw that in because I know a lot of us can look at horrible photos and videos and hear horrible stories about human suffering, and we can't with animals. That's another thing that needs to be looked into by psychologists. What the fuck is that?
Well, it kind of dawned on me. I think a lot of that stuff actually portrays to a lot of youth, and I'm not saying like the youth, like everyday's youth, and especially not our youth of 2019, but like more kind of a passage. I kind of want to say more of like passing through that puberty stage and hitting that kind of testosterone-y kind of sounds like a soup.
Well, what are you referring to specifically?
I'm getting there.
Testosterone.
That's delicious with the little
that Mark got it.
With the little Mary Banana.
In the 80s, I remember when we were kids, and I'm not saying we as a whole because I don't know if we all did it, but like I had certain friends that we would look. There was across town in a small little video shop. There used to be a place that sold Faces of Death, and it was a series of VHSs that had real life accidents and weird shit. Just, I mean, and they cataloged it. There's quite a few of them, and it would be like. I remember specifically a couple of them were like one guy jumped off a building, but he forgot to count the basement as a level, and bungee jumped off of it and just died. And I mean, they have it all videotaped.
Yeah, what happened was they didn't take into consideration that most buildings don't have a 13th floor.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
So they made it one floor too long. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but like. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is kind of more of a younger thing, more of a testosterone kind of driven thing. Is that like nowadays, I wouldn't ever want to watch that shit.
That's a good point.
I watched the shit out of that stuff when we were kids.
Yeah,
we did in groups. We would watch it and we'd be like, oh my God, that's so gross, But
that's
like,
really interesting.
You grew up that kind of, I don't know, lust for.
Do you think you have a better value for life as you get older?
That's a good question. As soon as Lyle said that, I'm like, yeah, that's true. What is that? I think maybe I would have just thought that I have enough bad shit in my brain. I don't need any more.
I think at a certain point, you're still trying to experience the universe. You know what I mean? And so you will watch stuff like that, and you like, oh well, that's what that is, and then you realize, I don't need to see that, or you just go fully down that path, and if you're some kind of psycho or something, But you realize, like, even now, like, certain things, I used to be fully into horror movies, and I still like them, but when I was like 18, whatever, I got Fangoria magazine every month and was like super into all that shit. And it's like now sometimes, depending on what it is, it's like, do I really want to watch that? Do I really need to see that? So I don't know.
Interesting. Well,
a lot of those Saw movies I couldn't get into, and it's because of that. I've already dropped on past it, and it was just like, you know what, this is not good.
Although one thing, Hostel's more torture porn, but Saw definitely has torture porn in it. But I'll say this about Saw: it was fun to see the creative ways that they were killing the people.
Like Final Destination, kind of the
Final
same.
Destination is similar, where it wasn't so much a prolonged torture thing as much as it's just death after death after death after death. I can get into that more than I can the straight up like torture porn. Although I did like the Hostel movies, God help me. But I would wager that most people, if they think of like what most people think of as a snuff film, is Faces of Death. Now, a lot of that footage was faked, but certainly the animal killings were all real. And that, to me, again, I'm not even going to describe it, any of that stuff, because just describing it can disturb people. But there was some actual footage, like Lyle said, people jumping off of buildings, suicides, accident victims, live executions. But a lot of that was fake. We thought it was all real. No, you can get on Wikipedia. There are lots of sites that break down what's real and what's not. And a lot of it is. But, I remember going down and getting all those and coming home when we would watch it. And we were young. And it was entertaining, but it was like shocking. And they just gave you that indescribable feeling. Like it was a strange feeling. It's not quite a horror movie. It's not quite real life, but we couldn't get enough of it at one time. And now, like I said, and like Lyle said, I go the long way around putting any more of that shit in my head. But I remember getting something out of it at one point. It was just that shock value. But so it's like, what is all of this? And I wanted to look into what the fuck was happening here, because it's kind of hard to rationalize into words. Why are we attracted to terrible things? I don't think most of us like the idea of people suffering or dying, or animals suffering and dying. Yet, as you approach an accident scene, is there something in the back of your head that's like, am I going to see something fucked up? That's not necessarily dread. It's just this weird sort of.
It's hard to admit that too. Isn't it like it's true?
Yeah,
and I hate admitting it. I absolutely hate that I do that.
It's pretty fucked up. But what does it mean? Where does it come from? Well, as I said in my research, it brought about some fairly inconsistent results. Like, a lot of experts believe that we're drawn toward violence in sports because it harkens back to some day when we were cave people and all we really had was our wits and our strength and agility. We hadn't invented money or status, and even good looks didn't mean what they would later mean. And something about that ancient tie wakes up some dormant part of our lizard brain, this animalistic nature. I buy that to some degree, and I would bet that that's true with a lot of things that we see concerning violence, or even, being drawn toward fighting and being violent yourself. And when it comes to violence in movies, I found a lot of contradiction in the research, where some would say that it actually has been scientifically proven to warp our brains and in many cases encourage violence, which goes all the way back. I mean, this is old as time that people have been saying this. Others, of course, shoot it down, saying that not only does it not encourage violence, but some studies have shown that people who watch more horror movies are much less likely to be violent people in real life. I suppose a lot of my horror film nerd friends are pretty much shut-ins, so you're not likely to be violent, but because you never leave your basement. I'm kind of teasing. But we're going back to the previous notion that when violent movies or playing violent video games makes us more violent. One interesting thing that I did see in the research is recalling the days of the Roman Empire. And there's no question that watching these gladiators destroy other human beings or animals in this violent, powerful, manly, masculine way was definitely inspiring a lot of especially young, impressionable fans in the arena. So they would train and, dedicate their life to becoming much like their hero. this is a lot like wanting to grow up and be Russell Wilson. But that was such a different time and a different scenario that I have a hard time believing that seeing anything violent is going to encourage you to be violent in that sort of way. And I feel like we've been talking about this for fucking ever, and I guess we'll continue to. But there is a plethora of examples where violent people were into violent films and violent video games, and they watched rape porn. But if you take 10 kids that walked into their high school and shot it up, they're likely going to have video games, right? Just because they're kids, they're modern kids. If you look into their lives and you find video games, which is likely, and out of some of those video games, if any of them are violent, that's likely, are you just going to assume, well, now we have a connection? I think a lot of researchers think that way. Quote unquote researchers. I think that's how they work. It's like the reverse engineer thing is like, well, we have this, this, and this, so it must lead to this. Ignoring the very easy math that we can all do in like 30 seconds, which we'll think about how many people have all of that shit and more fucked up things.
Well,
and
it's
don't
more...
rape, kill, or...
Yes. In regards to shootings, I mean, like the data about how many countries have video games and mental illness and don't have even a fraction.
Of them?
Yes. And don't even have a fraction of what we have here. What's the common denominator? What's different for us? I mean, I'm not going to get in the gun control fucking chit chat here, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it's stupid. It makes me so mad that video games becomes a scapegoat for violence.
It always has, and it always will. I mean, what's funny is that they were saying this when we were, playing Atari. They were really saying this when we were playing it. They were saying it about fucking pinball. They also
say it about rock and roll and
the Satanic Panic.
And
this is why I say quote unquote researchers. These aren't legit, in my opinion. This isn't legitimate research. This is laziness. This is people like throwing a rock and wherever it lands is like, yeah, my chores are done. There's your cause right there. And maybe selling a few books, maybe getting more people in the congregation, whatever the fuck their ultimate outcome is, it works. Because people want to believe that the problem in any given scenario is simple, identifiable, and fixable. And video games is kind of all those things, right? Horror movies is kind of all those things. Rock music is all those. Just ban it, or put, censor it, or put, age restrictions, and make it harder to get those things. But in reality, we're talking about psychological things more often than not, mixed with some other things. And, I'm sure there is at least a few examples of somebody being inspired by a horror movie to go do a thing of violence. But that's
I'm pretty sure that's only they were already
idea.
Predisposed to do that.
Exactly. It's only in specifics. The want or the the ability to do those horrendous things is there. You don't need that encouragement. And again, it's a numbers thing. Just look at how many people aren't. But I think there's a lot of reverse engineering going on there when they try to fit in the causation category when it should be, again, obviously a hunter is going to watch hunting videos. So it's as simple as that. But outside of psychology, I did find some interesting studies. And as always, it was on mice. Now, there was some study looking into the aggression of mice who were fighting over food or dominance or mates. And they found that a lot of interesting things. But one that jumped out at me was that it was quite clear to anyone who studied the behavior of mice for years that the mice who had just beat the shit out of another mouse acted more confident, more content, and all around more happy. In other words, the aggression and the violence was rewarding. It felt good. This does go back to the notion that aggression and violence is possibly tied to something that was programmed into us at the dawn of our species. Like, just as a survival mechanism. It makes sense to program us to feel good about conquering, right? That's true no matter if it's just for our species or for our morals or our politics. That's what we've done. We conquer and we feel good about it. Now, as to why we like to watch, the more passive aspect of this, studies say that this might actually be a sign of our advancement of the species, believe it or not. Now, where we become more passive and still holding on to. We want to enjoy aspects of that animalistic brain while still holding on to some sort of civilization. Like, we like aggression, but we want to see it channeled and contained and at a safe distance. This certainly explains why some people enjoy watching criminals get shot or executed. Or we can see something that triggers almost a type of euphoria in our lizard brain, but still remained refined and civilized to some degree. I would wager that this explains a lot of the sports. A lot of, why do we want to see those guys beat the shit out of each other? Because it's controlled, it's civilized. We know it's ordained. We can be okay with it morally. That's the advancement. Like, we're figuring shit out. Like, violence is not necessarily good, but it's in us. It's our lizard brain meeting. What's the opposite of lizard brain?
Why do you keep saying lizard brain?
Do you not know that phrase?
No.
Well, it's basically your fight or flight. It's your animal. I don't know why we have chosen lizard. I think because reptiles are thought to be maybe like cold and concise.
They fight or they flight.
Yeah, it's like we have that. Yes, we can figure out how to get to the moon and pressurize the cabin of a 737. We can do all these things, but we also kind of still want to conk that motherfucker on the noggin with the rock that's in there. Those are almost dueling parts of ourselves. Like, no wonder we're so fucking stressed out. I really think that we, like, the anxiety and depression and us going schizo at a record level in this modern age, I really think that this is some massive glacier carving a path through human evolution. I think that we're at a phase where we are grappling with that old brain and the new brain, and we don't know how to adjust. So there's this war happening in our heads, and I feel like it's heading somewhere, but I don't know that we're going to get resolved in our lifetime or our kids' lifetime. I think that that glaciers move slowly. Think how far away we are from the lions tearing people apart, but some of that shit is still imprinted on us. Go ahead, Lau.
It's technology. I mean, our brains weren't designed to do what we are doing with our brains, with our phones, our cell phones, like the Facebook feed.
Yeah, that's a whole new level of evolution.
And, well, I mean, it's something that our brains weren't even designed to do in the first place. So it's like you're going to have people that are going to frizz the fuck out eventually, It's going to be weird. It's going to be weird to see in 20 years, because there's only a few of us, it's like our generation that know how to step away from it.
Yeah.
To know how to step away from technology. These kids that are, early in life right now that have all this technology around them, they don't know any different. So it's going to be curious to see what's going to happen in the next few,
Yes, it will. Yeah, especially as we merge more and more with biology and electronics. Now, going back to the more voyeuristic elements of how we are entertained, I did have a good laugh at my little bit of research on this. Now, as you all know, as Chris mentioned, it's no secret. I've talked about it probably 300 episodes out of the 350 that we did on Tales from Space, but it came up in some way. I'm not really driving around town with my binoculars, but I'm not really not driving around town. But Psychology Today suggests that voyeurism is in fact a disorder. Now I'm quoting from the website. Boy. It says now this is their description. It's pretty. No, we all know this, but the individual normally experiences sexual arousal and spying intentionally on unsuspecting persons. The person being watched may be naked, disrobing, or engaging in sexual activities.
Dang, what about all those apartments they're putting in across the street?
I think I went to Ron's house and no joke. About that. He had his telescope set up, and I just happened to peer through it, and it was right in the windows, a neighbor's window, 2 miles away.
I've never made an apology, and I never made no bones about it. If I have 5 minutes and there's an interesting window in view, I'm gonna look in it. I'm not crawling up a fucking lattice and I'm not, videotaping somebody in the bathroom.
Oh, so good.
I'm not at that level, but I do.
Give it time.
I'm just drawn toward a fucking window. I don't know why. But it goes on to say, unintentional viewing is not considered voyeuristic. So if you happen upon a window, like I did when we were in Bremerton and I just saw those titties, but the disorder comes in if you intentionally look. The individual normally experiences sexual arousal in spying intentionally on unsuspecting people. Now, we all know what voyeurism is, but this is the more sexual variety. And as we talked last week, like when I used to listen to my neighbor's phone calls when I lived downtown on the police scanner, there was almost never any sexual talk. And it was still like, it was fascinating. It was gripping in a funny way. And I couldn't even explain it. But I told you, I witnessed this many, many times where people would call me a creep and saying, oh my God, I can't believe you're listening to your neighbor's phone calls. And I'd be like, oh, embarrassed. And I go to shut it off. And they'd be like, turn that fucking back on. It was just getting good. It's like, okay, so what is that?
Just getting hard.
This is what I want psychologists. Zip. This is what I want psychologists to look into more, because it's not just this, oh, maybe I'm going to see a boob if I put my binoculars in that window. It's something else. And to me, it's more akin to like next level people watching, which doesn't sound better. But, it's like, it sounds like I'm making excuses for being a creep.
Say
And maybe
next level people watching? Hold on.
Next level people watching.
People watching 2.0.
Oh, zip. Oh, I got a hell of a zoom on this camera, Ross Hire. But I could sit in a crowded place and watch people watch all day. Well, as long as I have a little bit of booze and good Wi-Fi, I could sit there all day just watching people. And I used to do this overhearing conversations, like at the coffee shop. I would go to write scripts and stuff. And there were times when I was stuck on dialogue. I would take the headphones out, because I usually have like the oceans or some symphony music playing when I would write. I'd take my headphones out and I would just sit and listen. Eavesdropping. There are conversations happening around us all the time. We block them out the same way that we block like power lines and, billboards and all this junk that we've surrounded our environments with. We block it out because we don't care, we don't want to hear it, or we're into our own shit. But if you start tuning in individual conversations, it's fucking fascinating. It's like, I don't really relate to most people, which is probably why I'm fascinated by a lot of them. But I think this kind of voyeurism is tied more closely to the gossip sort of thing, I guess, that people got out of, who's sleeping with who in Hollywood back in the penny press days, and which led to all the gossip magazines and tabloids. It led to a lot of reality TV, or even conspiracy theories and like internal government scandals. These are all very closely linked to me. And I think that ultimately we're just curious people and slightly opportunistic, slightly creepy at least, and you add these elements to some crazy shit still going on in our not fully advanced brain, and I suppose you can start connecting at least some of the dots as to why we're drawn toward watching fucked up things. But we pretend to be rapists and to be raped during sexual gratification, to get sexual gratification. Not all of us. I get not all of us. Should put an asterisk on that. But you know what I mean. Like, we do things that on paper are really weird and really dark and really troubling. But if you're just kind of slipping in and out of that as a fantasy and as an escapist type thing, I think we all have a version of it. If not several versions of it. We don't talk about it. We hide it because we're ashamed, and maybe we should be with some of these things, but we're complicated monkeys. We're complex creatures. Now, to close out, I do want to make it clear that, there are mentally ill or troubled or deeply disturbed and dangerous individuals who are out there seeking and making, bad videos. Like, they're not in it for the shock value. They're in it for a whole different reason, but that's for a whole different conversation on a whole different show. But anyways, you guys have any thoughts on any of that before we move on to Weird Trippy?
The only other aspect of this that I find intriguing, and I don't know about you guys, and I still have a problem with this, is I still am drawn sometimes to just watching the most terrible things I can find online. Like, somebody's in the news because there was a beheading that was flooded to social media or something. Mm-hmm. Occasionally, I still watch one of those, and I'm never happy with myself for doing that. Like, it's. Do you guys ever do this stuff? Maybe I'm alone.
I used to.
No, I don't. I used to. Yeah, back when I was younger, I would watch shit like that. I don't know if I ever went so far as to watch something like the terrorist beheading videos.
I only saw one of those, and I'll never be the same.
Shit before that, and I've seen people basically be dead in real life. Like head crushed by a truck and shit like that.
You Bangladesh shit.
So I was just like, I don't need to. You know what I mean?
I wish I was not of this mindset sometimes. Like, it's not all the time, but it's enough to where I feel like I've seen things no human should ever see.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
And you can only and you can't unsee it. Is the thing?
Yeah, no, I regret it every time.
That is a real thing that will stay with you forever. But Lyle really kind of blew my mind a little bit ago when he just brought the age into it. I never really thought about that. But you are the youngest in the group, Chris, and I would wager that most of it. Now, here's the thing, though. I feel like I talked about this recently on the show. Maybe it was in the last episodes of the Space Pod, but. You'll do this thing where you're watching a video on Facebook and the next video is completely, it'll like autoplay some next video if you're watching on someone else's feed, which I don't know why it does that, and it'll be completely unrelated. Like you'll be watching a cute baby goat video and the next one is like some police shooting. Now I've gone down those rabbit holes recently, but even those, if I get a drift of where it's going and I don't like it, I'll turn it off. I'm not going to watch it no matter what. But I never would dial up something. I mean, it's as simple as a Google search. You can find any horrific image you want on planet Earth. Now, we didn't even really get into the true crime aspect of this. Right now, some of the most popular podcasts are true crime podcasts. We've all seen the documentaries. We've seen the Netflix specials, these true life stories of horrible things. We see the Manson family photos. We've all Googled crime scene photos, from the Simpson case or whatever. Like we have this obsession with true crime. That's another aspect of this. It's like, what are we enjoying about that? I think a lot of it might actually be tied to our understanding of how temporary we are.
I think a lot of people get off on those true crime things because they could, in their mind, figure out the crime. It's kind of like a puzzle. They try to put the puzzle together, and they need to. And some people thrive on that, dude. It's like somebody in the 80s with a crossword puzzle sitting there at the end of the day trying to fill it out. It's a new hobby, it's kind of crazy. I was going to back to what Chris was saying is like, I have watched some weird shit like on the internet. I think when it was just a little infant, when the internet was really small. But like nowadays I haven't gone down any kind of rabbit holes like that.
I need to grow up, I guess. Cause even like 6 months ago, I watched something that I will never forget. And it's just bad. It's not good.
Do you do that? Okay, I will admit something. The days of like going to deadtrainbum.com, which probably isn't even there anymore. It's exactly what you want or don't want. Kind of regret even putting that out there, but experiment. It's you got to live your own life. What I will do is sometimes go to eFucked. Are you familiar with eFuck.com?
No,
with a K. It's sex.
I'd like to be.
It's sex-related versions of what we're talking about, which is like things you can't unsee, whether it's anal prolapse, which I don't go in for those.
Oh no,
I don't go in for those.
No, thank you.
I've seen that in real life. Wait, edit that out.
You don't go in for those, but do you go out?
I don't go in for them, but I go all kinds of out. Or it ranges from like
a little flower,
like a girl accidentally shit herself when the dude pulled out during anal, from all the way into like barfing on someone's junk because it's like,
guys, I got something to do, gotta go.
efuck.com. But I suppose that's a similar thing. It's like, now I'm not jacking off to this shit. I'm not looking at this stuff thinking like, damn son, I wish someone was barfing on my junk. So what is it? And it's like I'm repulsed, and I'm like, oh God, did I really just see that? It's a similar thing.
Yeah.
And you can't unsee it, much like a lot of the stuff we've talked about tonight. But
2 girls in 1 cup. Never unseen.
Yeah, I watched 20 seconds of that. I'll never forget that 20 seconds. But I'm good after that.
We can all agree that there's no way that's shit.
Do you guys remember?
Dude.
Do you guys remember the good old glassass.com?
Oh, man, that goes way back to when we first started the podcast.
Oh, my fucking God.
And Mr. Hands. Oh, there's some filthy stuff on the internet. But this is what I'm talking about. Like, now that we have proof of what people are doing and watching solely for the purpose of entertainment, we got some splaining to do, man. Like, what are we getting out of this? Now, obviously, like, if you're into watching some dude get ass raped by a horse, I think that's some next level shit. But how many clicks up the wheel is it really from watching anal prolapse video? Or I'm trying to think of some of the more fucked up things. Some dude busted a blood vessel. Trigger warning for just about anybody. Busted a blood vessel because he was coming so hard and he came blood. You can't unsee that shit. How far away is this kind of stuff? It's far, but how far is that from Mr. Hands or Glass Ass? It's only a few clicks. Are we comfortable? Are we comfortable admitting that it's only a few clicks away? Woo! Yeah, we're a complicated creature, man. What are we getting out of this? Why do we... It is tied. It's tied to porn. It's tied to horror movies. It's tied to fighting. It's tied to all these things that, on some level, we've been told or we should think are wrong or gross or things to be avoided. Meeting with things that are alluring and attractive and intriguing. But ultimately, what are we getting out of it? Because I think we do tend to go through phases of this. So is this just, like Lyle said, a rite of passage? There's something that you just have to, there's some giant box in your brain that you have to X out before you can move on? Maybe so. That's how I felt about... porn on a whole when we first got the internet. It was like, oh my God, this is my life now. I look at all the porn. And at some point, you feel like you've seen all the porn.
That's great.
And it's like, okay, to some degree, not that I don't look at porn now, but I would have guessed, 20 years ago, I would have guessed that porn would be a daily part of my balanced breakfast. It's nowhere near. No,
it's not for you.
But it was for a while. I went through a phase. It was like, I am going to jack off to every fucking thing I see.
Yeah. Shemale, what's that about? Clickety clack.
Shemale. I'm going to watch someone jack off with tits. And I'm going to check that off my list. And I just went through this whole list and was like, all right, I've confirmed what I always knew. First of all, 1, I'm a heterosexual. 2, I'm not afraid of the ass. I like titties. I like all sorts of sexual scenarios. But in the end, I'm a fairly simple guy when it comes to sex. Maybe I would have had to go through some seriously awkward times with human beings if I didn't, do that research on my own. But yeah, there's definitely in my head something that got crossed off in those early days of spending in that many hours looking at porn.
Think of the thought of if you didn't learn those at an early age and learning them at the age now, I think you'd be really fucked up in the head.
I never know. Well, it does make me wonder about kids that are 10, 11 years old discovering porn. I can't imagine that, but ultimately, how different is it than discovering the Playboy under your friend's dad's bed because you're a snoop like I was? How different is it? It's different, but how different is it? Developmentally, how different is it? I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's putting the cookie jar closer to the child and making them think that it's not as big of a deal as we thought when we were young. You remember the magic of finding like one magazine? Just like stumbling across one magazine when we were kids?
You know what's funny is you just started talking about something I know we've touched on before, that like finding that one porno mag as a kid. And I remember you saying this exact, like we went down this rabbit hole years ago, and you said something like every fucking kid stumbles across that one porno mag and it's like finding gold. And I'm like, I had that exact experience, motherfucker, and it's weird. Like, I'm like, everyone had that. Everyone did have that experience.
Yeah. If it wasn't a magazine, it was like maybe walking it or like seeing your cousin fucking somebody. I've heard so many origin stories. Like your first experience was seeing something, like seeing something next level, and like innocent type. You just stumble onto it and you find what you find and you see what you see. But yeah, it's a different world. Again, I don't know if it's bad different. It's just different. But it'll be interesting to see where we go sexually in the next few decades for starting a generation off on a world where every day of their life there was such thing as internet porn, and every death, execution, animal cruelty video you could possibly imagine just right there to discover after getting home from school. Time will tell.
I'm so not looking forward to being a father to a child growing up in the digital age. I'm really struggling with some of that. Honestly, it's weird thinking about the implications of what's going to happen. And it's really rough.
Like I was saying, I grew up, I'm not even going to lie, straight up obsessed with sex. I kind of still am. Maybe not even kind of. But a lot of that was from growing up in such a repressed and restrictive environment and a repressed and restrictive time. So there was that cookie jar up on the shelf. And all I wanted was what was in that fucking cookie jar. I obsessed over it. I've had what's in the cookie jar now. I've had a lot of cookies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I still kind of obsessed
cookies,
with it.
White cookies, chocolate chip cookie, every cookie. Cookies with dicks.
Sugar-free cookies. All sugar cookies. But imagine growing up in a time where you were surrounded by cookies. Doesn't that have to make you not care as much? You know what I'm saying? It's like you have everything. It's all around you. We all know that human nature makes you not appreciate or really care about the things that are always readily available and always around you. We take it for granted. We don't focus on it. So maybe the next generations won't be quite so obsessive about it and so manic and careless as we were about it, because we felt like it was like a fucking sparkler in our hand and it was just burning down and we had to enjoy every fucking second of it because it's going to go away forever. Now they're growing up in this age where, I don't want to watch that. I'll watch it tomorrow. Or, at least in terms of entertainment and porn and all that, looking at things. Sexual encounters is a whole different ball game, but it was all tied together in my brain, and it was like, finding those little cracks in the otherwise repressive and cold world that was my youth. It still affects me as a 44-year-old man. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Logan's generation. Good Lord, by the time he's a man, the internet will be a thing that people talk about in the same way that we talk about FM radio.
Oh my God! Fuck off.
It's just how it is. So what is that generation going to be blown away by?
Yeah.
We'll see.
Man.
Could be worse.
Right.
Could be 1,000 times better. Well, shall we get on to some weird trivia with Christopher F. Hart?
Let's do that.
Back to front, weird trivia with Christopher F. Hart.
Y'all ready for this?
Ah,
that was the best one yet, guys.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of you
Almost
guys.
in sync. It's really hard to be in sync over Skype.
Yeah, it is. It's really hard to be in sync and sing that. All right. John Mark, 5 in a row. What is going on? I mean,
I don't know, man.
I don't stop. I'm on this hype train right now. I want to keep riding it. Choo-choo, motherfucker. 5 in a row. You know, we've done so many episodes in our other podcasts, and you've never.
It out there. I'm winning tonight.
Okay.
I just read this thing.
Thinking.
There may or may not be some square trivia going on.
It's not just positive thinking. It's got to be positive stating.
Thinking.
You have to say it. So
it's like Babe Ruth in it. He's pointing to the fucking grandstand. Let's do this.
Yeah.
All right. So, John Mark, 5 in a row. You're going to go first. 4 questions tonight. Winner takes all. Question 1. A San Diego woman had to make a trip to the ER after she swallowed the engagement ring that her fiancé had recently given her. What was the reason she gave the doctors that the new engagement ring had ended up in her tum-tum? Was it A, she told the doctors that she had a, quote, seriously sketched dream, end quote, and then woke up just knowing that she'd accidentally swallowed it? Was it B?
Oh, that speaks to me.
Was it B, she and her fiancé immediately got into an argument after he proposed, and she swallowed the ring so he wouldn't take it back?
Seems legit.
Is it C, her fiancé had presented her a cupcake with the ring poking out of the frosting, which she didn't see before she gobbled up?
You've seen that in movies. That old trick.
Or was it D, and there's no way not to take any of my double entendres in the way I wrote this. Seriously, her fiancé had presented the ring to her on the tip of his erect penis, and she accidentally swallowed it, getting it off.
I see what you did there.
Poetic.
John Mark.
And poetic.
Oof. Oh, wow. This is a... man, my pun game is failing me right now.
Well, Chris took all the good ones.
He did.
He nailed it.
I'm gonna go with B.
Okay. Ronster, you're next.
Oh, damn it. Well, I'm tempted to go toward the dick-related one, but as I said, as soon as you listed it, I'm sure I talked about it on the old show many times. To this day, I have a big Adam's apple, and when I sleep, sometimes that Adam's apple shifts in a way that informs my dreams. Now, it's never me smoking pole, which would be much more enjoyable than what it usually is, which is, like, back in the day, I used to fall asleep listening to things with my Walkman. So I would wake up in the middle of the night thinking that the pointy thing that was off to the side of my throat was the edge of the Walkman that I'd swallowed. To this day, I still wake up going, thinking that I choked on something huge. So I don't know. I know that this is not really tied to imagining, but something speaks to me about A.
All right, man. Go with your gut, baby. Go with your Adams.
Like once every 2 or 3 months, I wake up harfing thinking that I've swallowed something.
Lyle.
I'm gonna go with B, and not to tail off Sean Mark, but it kind of fits. It's what.
No, I get it. You know, winners hang out with winners, right?
Right.
That's what my dad used to fucking say to me all the time. Those were my dadisms.
That's why you don't have any friends, huh?
That's why I'm a loner. That's why I fucking fuck. That's with you fucks. All right, question 2. All right, guys. We've reached the inevitable. Warner Brothers is going to begin working on a movie based off of this toy franchise. What are we talking about? Just recently announced, too. Is it A, the Rubik's Cube, the movie? Is it A? What do we think about the movies we've had before I continue reading this list, okay?
Yeah.
Is it B, Mousetrap, the board game, the movie?
That's an amazing title.
I'm not gonna lie, I watched that.
Mousetrap, the board game, the movie. That's one of those things where the title might actually be the entire project.
Is it C, Funko Pop, the movie?
Oh, that makes sense. They got all those little characters. I mean, that'd be a lot like the Lego movie.
Yeah, definitely. Or is it D, The Pet Rock, the movie? One of these things is going to happen.
It's 90 minutes. Some stupid kid looking at it.
John Mark, what do you got, baby? Okay.
Ran away. Hi, John.
Johnny, Marky, baby.
I'm starting to realize why he always makes you repeat the answers.
I've been talking here with my mute on, and I tried to take the mute off, and it didn't fucking recognize my finger.
Anyways, I need you to repeat A through C.
Heard that before.
One of these things is not like the others. One of these things just isn't the same. I was really tempted to say Rubik's Cube, because that just sounds right. But that also seems a little untimely. I don't know. I think I'm going to go with the Funko Pop. That seems like something that they would do.
It's a solid choice. Okay. Ronster, where's your gut at, baby?
Boy, I was a strong Rubik's until John Marr pointed out that 3 sound insane, and 1 has characters you can use. Although, God, we're 80s crazy right now. In a Rubik's Cube movie. Have we talked about that idea before? There's something familiar about this.
Maybe it's your hopes, your dream diary.
I'm going to go with...
Just quoting.
I'm going to go with it.
Wait.
Wait. They're not going to do
Wait a second.
They're not going to do a Rubik's Cube movie.
Okay.
This is a cube. Is this the cube herring? For those of you who don't know, anybody that's listening and hasn't listened to the old program, Christopher stumped me many, many times on cube things in nature. We brought it up half-assedly recently on this show, but I think that might be the cube herring. Okay, so we got a Rubik's Cube, a Pet Rock, Funko
Pop,
and what's
Mousetrap,
B?
the board game, the movie.
Mousetrap, the board game, the movie. God damn you. Oh, we do make movies solely for the title these days. I'm going... I want to win. I want to win tonight. I'm going with John Mark on this one.
Funko Pop. All right.
Even if he's wrong, he's not ahead of me on that one. I'm not going to play the whole game that way, but I do think he has a good point. The rest are insane.
Lyle, baby, what you got?
Funko Pop, man. It's the only thing that makes sense.
Family fucking game. You know, okay.
You sound pissed.
No.
You
I'm torn. Here's the deal. Little fucked up. Mention that. I'm gonna institute a new rule. If you guys all guess one answer and it's the correct answer, I'm gonna tell you right then and there, you nailed it. And just an FYI, you guys nailed it. It was the Funko Pop movie. Boom, family game. You all have a point off the board. Boom.
Awesome. I gotta be honest. If John Mark had gone second, I probably would have chosen Rubik's.
You're playing smart tonight. I appreciate
maybe Mousetrap, the board game, the movie. Which is a solid made-up answer. Well done.
Hey, thank you. Question 3. In North Carolina, lots of cotton farming happens, but it's illegal for farmers to use this to plow their fields. It's kind of a random trivia question. I like these. So, once again, in North Carolina, lots of cotton farming occurs, but it's illegal for farmers to use this to plow their fields. What are we talking about? Is it A, electric tractors? Is it B, human horsepower, i.e. using a man or men to pull the plow?
Oh, let's see. Is North Carolina still considered south? Where is that on the map?
Or is it C, forklifts? Or is it D, elephants?
North Carolina.
A lot of pachyderm plowing going on in the continental U.S. these days.
Right. Indigenously, roaming the fields.
John Mark, where are you going, baby?
I'm going to go with human power.
Okay. We did that once. Okay.
Did we not learn? Mm-hmm.
Monster.
Elephants is real weird. But again, I've been researching weird things in the circus, and we did a lot of weird things with elephants. Like I was going to do more of a freak show thing tonight as part of my bit, but we got going long in the tooth. We used elephants for farming, not too distant in the past. I'm going to go with D.
All right. Lyle, what you got, baby?
No pachyderms.
Human, right?
Human horsepower?
Yeah.
You going with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's move on to
alone in my usual aisle of despair.
All right, let's move on to the final question of the night here. Question for, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I struggle to get to sleep at night. Now, according to a doctor's study, people who do this are more likely to fall asleep very quickly. Is it A, people that have a pet fish?
Oh, yeah.
Is it?
I had that fish. It didn't help.
Is it B, people that wash their genitals?
What?
Okay, be honest. Let's go around the clock here.
Yeah.
Brief detour. We all know the quick ball and butt rinse before we go and get laid, right? The horse bath, is that what you call it? We all have a different name. It's like, well, I've had quite a day. The old lady wants to get down. I don't quite feel like I will shower. I'm just gonna. What towel she got handy?
Oh yes,
this one's
splash it with some warm. Hope you warm the sink up for a bit before you do it, though.
I don't know, man. I like a chilled ball. I feel that enhances the experience.
Oh my god! Oh,
Lyle, you're the only one. Or wait, did John Mark left? Like Chris and I share just about everything. Lyle and John Mark just sort of hold back until we go, all right, well, moving on. Wisely.
Let you feel this one.
Like you guys drove it home. Mm-hmm. Let's start that over. Because I don't think... Okay, was it A, people that have pet fish? B, people that wash their genitals? C, people that eat dirt?
Eat dirt. Okay.
What's D? People that have excruciating diarrhea. One of these groups of people are going to fall asleep much quicker than the others. What is it?
Wow, that's a weird list.
I'm going to say pet fish.
Sorry about the never-ending siren out there. It just won't go. Okay, fish. Well, I can see some logic behind that. I used to have an aquarium in my room. Mm-hmm. The sounds were soothing. Watching it swim was kind of soothing and peaceful. But I feel like that would not have made a Christopher F. Hart. Although, you were the anti-fish guy.
Oh boy, it could have been a fish. A sea herring. It's all a herring from the sea, right?
A heron?
A herring?
A herring. I'm going to go with washing your balls. Here's my logic behind it.
I said genitals.
Well, either way. Here's my logic is... Well, this does apply more to the balls than the alternative. I feel like of all the things that get... compartmentalized, repressed, smothered, sweatboxed, if you will, in the human body, spanning both genders, all genders. Excuse me, it's 2019, not here. Spanning all genders is the testicles. So if you're, the saying, if your feet are warm, you're warm all over. I say if your balls are cool, you're relaxed all over.
Okay.
Cool and refreshed balls. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got to wash them balls. Yeah, I'm going with B.
Okay. Wow, baby, what you got?
Chris, where do the balls live in?
The scrotum?
That's right.
Oh, boy.
Scrotum. I need to make another greatest hits episode. I mean, not for this podcast.
We'll try to carry the joke on as far as we can through the episode. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to go with fish. It's like there is something kind of soothing about water falling and stuff like that. And like, an aquarium sounds create. So,
yeah. Well, either I dominated you bitches or you both tag teamed my ass. Let's find out.
Time will tell.
I think Lyle and John Mark were tit for tat.
They were tit for tat. Question 1. A San Diego woman had to make a trip to the ER after she swallowed the engagement ring that her fiancé had recently given her. The reason she gave to doctors that the new engagement ring was in her tom-tom was that she told doctors she had a seriously sketch dream and then woke up just knowing she had accidentally swallowed her newly received ring. Ronster, off to us.
Oh, I did go with that one.
You did. You remember? You were like,
which one's in Oh, that's right. Yeah, because it ties into my.
Yeah.
Oh wait. So wait, she.
Walkman.
So she dreamed. So what's the deeds on the story?
She had just recently received the ring, the ring, and had a dream that something was wrong and she'd swallowed it, and she woke up and her fucking ring was gone and her throat hurt.
So did she actually swallow it?
Yeah, she actually swallowed the ring in her sleep.
That's the opposite of my situation, which is I dream that I swallow giant things. She actually swallowed something swallowable. Youch. Did they have to cut it out of her?
I think they went down with the tube.
Okay.
Not cut. Yeah, and not so invasive.
I mean, if it was like a typical man's wedding ring.
Yeah, it was like a three-prong. It was like a 3-prong with diamonds and stuff.
Ooh, you can imagine that going through your intestine. Yeah, get that out, stingy wingy.
Bad news.
Bad news indeed. All right, question 2. Warner Brothers is going to begin working on a movie based off of this toy franchise. We were talking about Funko Pop. You guys nailed that one as a group.
Absolutely.
Just a gangbang on that one.
So
just
close to going to
every hole.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be honest. Like you can totally see in this day and age, a Rubik's Cube the movie, right?
I know, right?
Yep.
Everything 80s, man. Everything 80s. It'll happen. Yeah, like so many weird things that you pull out of your ass for this segment of the show over the last decade has come to fruition.
No, I really am owed something.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Question 3. In North Carolina, lots of cotton farming occurs, but it's illegal for farmers to use elephants.
Shut the fuck. That's what, you know what though, that fits into what I was researching just earlier. My research for once is feeding in. I'm kicking ass.
Yeah,
did I not say before this fucking episode?
Yeah.
Okay, where are we? 2 to. Is it 2 to 1?
No. You have 3 right in a row, buddy.
Yeah.
3 to 1.
Yeah.
But who's second? I can't lose.
You are second. You
Nobody.
I thought
you can't lose.
No,
you won.
All right, I don't want to spoil it for you.
I'm really proud because you called it. And you
I pointed like Babe fucking Ruth.
You want to risk all your points on question 4?
I do. Oh, that's an interesting thing to.
Double
Maybe that's the not tonight,
tip.
but some other night.
Pro tip. Don't.
Okay, I can't even remember the last question.
I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I struggle to fall asleep at night. And according to a doctor's study, people who do this are more likely to fall asleep much faster. The answer was have a pet fish.
Yes.
Instead of wash their genitals wrong. But I do say that will go to sleep faster as well.
Okay, what other... Name me one other podcast or show or publication anywhere on planet Earth where you are positioned between the choice of owning a pet fish or washing your genitals. I defy you to find me that other show. Yeah, well, it's funny because that's the one that I had experience with in my youth, but now I have a better understanding of how to relax yourself. I'm telling you, friends, wash them genitals before bedtime. Even if only.
Ron,
yes.
You just won Weird News Quiz. What are you going to do?
I'm going to wash my genitals and just sit in the open air. You have no idea how much current is happening in any given room until you wash your balls and just lay on your bed. You will feel the very direction of the weather.
I bet.
Did I lose?
Anyways, Ron.
Winning?
Ron.
That was a long pause, man.
It was 5 weeks of wins, and you just...
I have 5 weeks lost in 5 seconds of silence. There, try it at home. That's all I'm saying.
You did great, man. I think you should shoot for the stars every fucking week. John Mark doesn't have to win it every week. Lyle doesn't have to win it every week. You can have your spot in the timeline.
Well, I got one.
I gotta get out of here.
I'll be happy next week if John Mark takes it back, but I got my win.
You did.
That was pretty good.
Nice job, guys.
Weird. It all came down to the elephant one, really.
Yeah.
Right? Because we'd be tied otherwise.
Yeah.
And I just researched that. You know.
Dang elephants.
Elephants were a big part of the U.S. Life in general. Not something I learned until looking into crazy ways we spend our time and money and entertainment. Anyway, all right. Well, congratulations, me.
Good job.
Yeah. Anyway, let's see. Radar Station Art. I keep forgetting to list the new email. Radar Station Art. Right now, I'm going to set up a new email. But for right now, radarstationart@gmail.com. Is the most consistent place that I check these days. So if you have any show ideas, feedback, we've already got a whole pile of feedback. I'm pushing the first feedback show for a later date, but we've got like 20 emails on the new format, on the new show, holdovers from the last episode of Tales from the Space Pod that I want to address. Tons and tons of feedback coming in, but and keep that coming, but also show ideas if you want to be on the show, if you had a creepy experience, you've seen a UFO, if your uncle worked for Area 51, if you got some spooky story or you just want to get on and talk to us, we don't fucking care. We like having guests on. Yeah. We are going to get back into doing, this is we're in a weird place right now because I keep talking like it's the old show, but it's not the old show, and yet it is. And a lot of you have been with us since the old show. I apologize. It's probably an annoying thing to hear me reference things that a lot of the new listeners don't understand or know what we're talking about. But we used to have, on the old show, we had a lot of guests, like celebrity guests or expert guests, ufologists, people that studied government conspiracy theories, cryptozoologists, voiceover actors, which I got an update on that whole story next week, along with 9/11, which we'll be talking about. But if you want any kind of input on the show, radarstationart@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, again, this will change in the not-too-distant future, but for right now, it's patreon.com/Tales from the Space Pod. And if you want to support Lyle in his recovery from kicking the fuck out of cancer's ass, we are going to be holding Lylepalooza at Radar Station here in sunny Central Washington on September 28th. It's a Saturday. I believe the event is going to go from about 6 to 10, roughly. Now, we're only selling like 45 tickets and we're half sold out. We're more than half sold out at this point. And I realize that most people listening, it's impractical for them to come. But we've had people in faraway lands asking if we will be filming it so they can see it. Well, we're not only filming it, we're going to be live streaming it. We're going to be asking for a $10 donation. You're welcome to put in more. $10 donation will get you the entire evening live streamed just to you. You will see everything, including like the downtime, the in-between. We'll be shooting the shit. You'll be seeing some of the silent auctions. You'll also be able to bid, I should say, on some of the silent auctions. Some of them don't make sense to ship anywhere, let alone to Europe or Ruski. But you'll be able to bid on some of the things, and there'll be all sorts of perks and bonus things that we're going to do along the night, and we just don't know where it's going to go. This whole thing is going to be live. You can get yourself a 6-pack, a cool...
get drunk with me at the bar. Just get fucking loaded.
You get drunk?
For Lyle's liver. A kidney.
We're going to have drink specials at the bar, but for those of you at home, get a cool six-pack yourself. Pop in a microwave pizza and kick back and just spend 6 hours with us. It's going to be an amazing evening. We got burlesque, punk rock. We got the Bloody Oranges playing their first show in 7 years. We've got comedy. We've got close-up and far-away magic. And again, all sorts of random shit. And just being in the room with us on that night is going to be pretty special. And if you want to show up, like I said, we still got about 20 tickets or so left. You can get those at radarstationart.com/tickets, but get them fast. We still got just under 2 weeks to go, and like I said, we're over half sold out. And if you want in on this, you're going to have to get it soon. I'm contemplating moving some things over and working with the gallery next door to me to make some space so we can get more people in there. But awesome. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. So right now, we're only planning on selling 50 tickets to this thing. So you got to get in on it. radarstationart.com/tickets. Click on Lollapalooza. Get your tickets, boy. And if you don't, you will be able to see it live streaming. But, you never know what's going to happen with that technology. Anyway, tune in next week. We will be talking about 9/11. Who would want to miss that?
Not I.
Me either. See you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.
Friends, wash them genitals before bedtime.